Could you spend the night in a haunted bedroom? Well, how about living in one? This story's come into my mind as I'm doing a night of ghostly tales at Greystoke Castle in Cumbria this evening. The place has over 1,000 years of history and there's a whole host of ghosts that are said to dwell within. Now, I actually know and work with a chap who was born in the castle. His mother and father were the groundskeepers there many years ago. He's in his 60s now. And he's told me a few ghost stories that happened to his family over the time. Within the castle is a private residence. The current owner now lives there, I believe, or he could be the maintenance man, I'm not sure. However, in this one particular bedroom in the private residence, people that have stayed there over the years, and I mean decades, have reported falling asleep at night and then being awoken because they're freezing cold. And as they open their eyes, they're no longer in the bed. They're in the centre of the floor and laying on the wooden floorboards. Now, even stranger still, as they look back towards the bed itself, it's perfectly made as if they never fell asleep in it in the first place. Now, that's a type of paranormal activity that's been most commonly reported by those staying over at Greystoke Castle, which I'm doing tonight, by the way, so we'll see what happens. But what ghost could be responsible for this? Well, there's a total of 9 reported to haunt Greystoke Castle, so it could be any, but the most commonly sort of life that I can associate with this paranormal activity is that of the maid. There's said to be a restless ghost of a former maid of Greystoke Castle that accidentally set fire to it in the 1800s. Now, that blaze really did happen. Whether or not she caused it is up for debate. However, story goes she had a candle and held it too close to the bed linen cupboard and up a fire started. Now, she is said to still haunt the castle despite not dying in the incident, never being able to rest for what she did to the building. It never quite recovered until the 1950s after the fire. So some believe that when you're spending the night there, she knows you're not a resident of times gone by and you're not of the correct aristocracy to be staying at the castle, therefore pulls you out of the bed in your sleep, leaves you on the floor and makes it ready for somebody worthy of sleeping in the castle. What do you make of that?
We are one day closer. Look how cute these are. I do not care if they're meant to be keychains. You cannot tell me that they're not cute. So the person sharing the story opens up this whole story asking if you believe in skinwalkers, because that is what he thinks happened. So this happened around the pandemic time, where he says that his parents would let their dog Honey sleep in bed with them. He explains how Honey was super used to being outside. He also explains how Honey would start hitting the door whenever she wanted to come back inside. Those sounds that Honey makes when she tries to come back into the house is a sound that everybody in that family is very familiar with. So one night, it was around 4 in the morning, and he heard those sounds that Honey makes when she wants to come back into the house. And again, he wasn't surprised or scared. He knew it was Honey just trying to get back in. Still half asleep, he's starting to get up so that he can go and open the door for Honey. But that is when he heard something was off. Like, it was almost as if Honey was knocking, and that's not necessarily the type of sound that she would make. Not as strong as it was coming through. It wasn't her typical like scratching noises. It almost just sounded like Honey was knocking on the door. He actually went back, got his cell phone, and he wanted to put a flashlight through the window just to see if Honey was outside of that door. He wasn't really scared at the time, if he's being honest, because the parents' bedroom was just right in front of his. He pulled the curtain, looked towards the front door with the flashlight, and indeed Honey was sitting in front of the door outside. Honey was looking straight at him at this point, and he tried to call her, but she didn't have a reaction. She didn't wag her tail like she usually does whenever he calls her, so he kind of backed up a little bit, and then he looked again to see if Honey had changed or if she had moved or if she was still sitting there. She was still just sitting there looking directly in his direction, but wouldn't move, wouldn't react. There was something really weird about Honey. She wouldn't even react to the flashlight being at her face. As he's staring at Honey for like a few seconds, he could have sworn that her eyes looked human. He called out to her one last time, "Honey, are you okay?" And she still wouldn't move, she wouldn't react. So he decided that he was going to go to his parents' bedroom to go and tell them that something was wrong with Honey. When he opens the door to his parents' bedroom, the first thing that he sees is Honey in bed with his parents fast asleep. And as soon as Honey heard him open that door, she got up, she started wagging her tail and came to say hello to him like she usually does. Whatever the thing was that was outside definitely looked like Honey, but it was not Honey. He still had the courage to look out the window again because he wanted to see if that thing was still sitting out there, and obviously very terrified, he said that he went, opened up that window, like the curtain, and there was nothing out there this time. He went back to bed, but he explains how he could not sleep that night. In addition to that shit happening, he also started hearing like if somebody was walking on their roof. I would have put Honey on the floor and went to bed in between my parents because what the fuck, I'm not about to stay up all night just wondering what the fuck is walking on the roof or who the fuck was pretending to be Honey.
Someone emailed me and said that something was mimicking their 1-year-old brother, and that wasn't the only thing either. This story is just a mixture of horror. The story is long and it's detailed, and the scariest parts are at the end. And I hate to do that to you guys. I never do that to you guys, but it's just how the story was sent to me. This happened in Saudi Arabia, and this girl did tell me I could use her name. Her name is Cha, and she will be tagged in the description. So it started in 2023 when she moved to Saudi Arabia for her dad's work. But they were looking at schools for her and her siblings. She was 16 years old. Her siblings were 3 and 13. So the compound that they found offered a house to stay in until the house that they were renting was redesigned. It took about 3 weeks, and they agreed to move into a house that was right at the side of the compound. Now, the house that they were moving into was really old and creepy, and it had some weird stains in the house. It also had writing on the walls from the previous owners that were renting it. The moment that they walk in, they put their bags down, and her dad walks over to the radio and he starts working on the radio signal. So this house is furnished, right? So her mom and her are sitting in the kitchen chairs while her dad is working on the radio signal. The moment that her dad opens up the radio, there's like this strange noise coming out of it. It almost sounded like 2 people talking at the same time. The only thing is both voices weren't coming from the radio. One was coming from the radio, but the other was directly in Cha's ear. So she's kind of looking around, like thinking that everyone else heard it too, but no one is showing any signs of concern except for her mother. Her mom then looks at her and just goes, just be quiet. So she was kind of like, okay. After that, things are okay. They unpack their bags. They're looking around. As she's looking around, she finds these paintings, and these paintings are very unsettling to her. She said that they had faces on them, but it was strange because it would just be like an ordinary picture of like a rose. There wasn't actual pictures of faces, but she could see faces in the pictures. So at this point, she decides that she's just going to ignore this because she's starting to get freaked out. She doesn't really understand the voice things, the paintings now, and the radio. Well, her and her mom decide that they're going to walk upstairs. So they walk upstairs, and when they get upstairs, they see this couch, and it's like this big pink couch. When suddenly her mom looks at her and is like, don't go anywhere near that couch. And she's like, what? And she's like, I don't want you to go anywhere near that couch. I'm getting a bad feeling from it. Just leave the couch alone. And she's just kind of like, okay. But right as her mom is saying this, she feels something staring at her from the corner of her eye, but she looks and there's nothing there. She again just thinks that she's being paranoid. So some time passes and it's now later on in the night, and she is trying to get settled in still. She's feeling very weird about the house. She's even feeling very unsettled about the room that she's in. But again, she decides to ignore it and she drifts off to sleep. She wakes up in the middle of the night and she cannot move a muscle. And there is someone breathing directly on her face. She said that it felt cold. She then opens up her eyes and she looks at the wall and she doesn't see anything, but she still cannot move and she's terrified. So she starts praying in her head, and then she starts trying to move her mouth. And as soon as she starts to try to move her mouth, her body is suddenly able to move. But she sits up and all of a sudden she cannot breathe. She said that this went on for nights. The same exact thing would happen. She would go to bed. She would wake up in the middle of the night. She would wake up to something breathing on her face. She would open her eyes, look at the wall, and then she would sit up as soon as she was out of sleep paralysis and she could not breathe. She said that at one time she even woke up to her luggage being in a different part of her room than she had left it. She said that the exact amount of time that this went on for was 5 nights. And during this time that this was happening to her, apparently her father was sleep talking a lot, and he was saying things like, please forgive me, don't, stop it, in the middle of the night. And her mom would wake up to this and wonder what the hell he was doing and just be sitting there as he was talking in his sleep, saying the strangest things. And he had never done this before. But 2 weeks later, things get weirder. So her and her siblings are in her house and they're just hanging out when suddenly they hear the door just slam shut. It just slams shut, and it's the door to their shared bathroom. They walk over to the door and the door is completely locked. They cannot open it, and they did not lock it, and they did not shut it. They cannot get this door open. They actually had to wait for their father to get home, and thank God nobody was in that bathroom because they would have been locked in the bathroom. So that freaks her out, and she knows at this point that something is going on. After the whole door debacle, she decides that she's going to go into her room. As soon as she walks into her room, she notices something on her curtains that she had not noticed previously. There's these weird brownish, reddish, she said kind of orangish stains on her curtains. She said they looked old and new. She immediately starts thinking blood, right? So she starts freaking out. She starts taking pictures and she runs downstairs and she shows her mom the picture. Her mom loses it over this. Her mom is is like, someone was murdered here. I know it. Like, obviously her mom is having these weird feelings about the house. She was from the second she walked into the house. So she's freaking out about this. So she goes over to the father and she shows the father the pictures. And she's like, something happened here. And her father, apparently, who has been pretty dismissive this entire time, is being dismissive again. Her mom is adamant. She's like, no, go upstairs and check the curtains right now. So he walks up the stairs. He walks into her room. He goes and looks at the curtains. And she said that he just stopped and stared at them. Didn't say a word, just like stared at the curtains, but he says nothing. And then he just walks out of the room. Here's the crazy part. She goes outside, right? She goes outside and she looks at the backyard sometime later and she sees this spot outside and there's grass, green grass everywhere, except for this one big patch of dirt. Literally, she said it looks like a grave site. It looks like a grave site without a gravestone. It's the only part of the yard that does not have grass growing on it. So she's just like, okay, that is weird. And she has a theory. She thinks that somebody was in that house and that they were buried in the backyard. They're about to leave this house anyway because their house is now ready. And so she's thinking in her head, okay, I'm about to leave. This mess is going to all be behind me. She could not have been more wrong. She would experience some of the scariest things that she had ever experienced in her entire life. So the house is ready to move in and there's a maid that helped them move everything out and everything into the new house. So she's upstairs in her siblings' room and she's taking out the bed frame so that she can get to the bed covers. Apparently there was bed covers like below the bed frame. As soon as she goes to grab them, something shoves her. She said that her knee hit the hardwood floor and her jaw just smashed on the corner of the table. She said that this hurt so bad she was bruised for weeks. Fast forward, it gets so much worse. So the whole incident with her being pushed, later on that night, she goes to bed. She wakes up in the middle of the night and she realizes that she's paralyzed again. And she's like, what the fuck? What? Why? She opens her eyes. She looks to the right of her and standing right in front of her face is a goat man and then a woman wearing pink. And they are talking to one another and she cannot understand a word they are saying. She is terrified at this point. When suddenly, after they're done talking at this point, the goat man takes his hoof, puts it on her neck and smashes down and starts twisting her neck. She said at this point, she just starts praying in her head. But immediately when she started praying, this thing starts letting go, but it starts to get angry and she can visibly see this. And then it just disappears. Somehow she goes back to sleep. Of course she does. You guys are insane. Well, the night is not over for her because she wakes up a couple hours later and she can hear someone playing with her drawers. Her eyes are closed, but she can hear them like opening and closing her drawers. And at first she thinks that this is just her little brother because he would sometimes come in her room and just play with stuff. So she, without opening her eyes, says, "Stop, Adam, what are you doing?" But no one responds. So she opens up her eyes and she doesn't see anyone. She's like, okay, that's weird. So she ends up drifting back off to sleep. This part is, she wakes up again for the third time, paralyzed. She had left her door slightly open, so she opens up her eyes and she looks in the doorway and she sees this tall, slender figure wearing her baby brother's clothes when he was 1 year old, imitating her little brother's voice, calling out for her to come play with him. She said that this scared her so badly. It was one of the most terrifying things that she had ever gone through. She literally thought she was going crazy. She said the worst thing about this was that after this happened, for a long period of time, she would repeatedly catch her little brother, who was 3 years old, by the way, staring in the mirror, just talking to himself, laughing, acting like somebody was on the other side and he was playing with that thing or whatever it was, but he was staring at himself constantly, just laughing. He would do this in her room though. Like he would go into her room and just stand in front of her mirror for hours at a time, just laughing and touching the mirror. Just talking to himself. She did say that suddenly things did go back to normal and she's not sure why it stopped, but that it did eventually stop and that she's so glad because it was the scariest experience that she had ever had. I'm so sorry, you guys. The story was so long. I have no time for anything. Please leave your thoughts, suggestions, comments like down below. But as always, please be respectful. I would love to know what you think about this story. What do you think this was? And what do you think her little brother was doing? Love you so much. Keep sending me your scary stories and have a spooky night. Spooky kisses and haunted hugs.
Has anyone had a creepy experience out at sea? I worked with a man at an Amazon warehouse that migrated to the US from Haiti, and he had the best paranormal stories. One story he told about the ocean was that his aunt was kidnapped by mermaids and lived under the water for 7 days. I don't have details because he told me these stories years ago, but I know mermaid stories are very common in Haitian culture. I believe this, especially after the whole dolphin thing. I believe this. I was stationed on a 270 cutter in the Coast Guard. Engineer, so I spent mid-watches in the control room doing a round of the engine room every hour. It was something like 2 a.m., so I got up to do a round, which usually took about 15 minutes. One of the checks was the oil level on the engines. I had a rag in each pocket of my cargo pants, felt one get tugged, and just figured it got caught. Wasn't possible, because I was standing stationary in the middle of a 4-foot wide catwalk between the engines with literally nothing around me. But that's how my brain rationalized it at that hour. I shrugged it off. I turned to check the oil on the other engine and felt the tug again. Rag was missing and about 10 feet away on the deck plate. I noped the fuck out of there back to controls. Had Chief on watch as well in the control room. He played back the recordings, but couldn't see it because it was on the opposite side, of course. But he could see my confusion, and when I turned, it was missing and see me walk over to pick it up. Also had taps on the shoulder a lot below deck and felt like someone was behind me. Saw shit out of the corner of my eye a lot too. Heard footsteps in the middle of the night in the engineering spaces when we were in port and everything was shut down. It was a bizarre experience. Okay, no, because ghosts in the middle of the ocean is terrifying. Like, who is it? It could literally be anybody. It could be anybody's spirit. My dad is a semi-professional fisherman. He's done big tournaments since I was a kid, and we are both pretty old now. Dad is a very no-nonsense kind of man, somewhat of a hillbilly to be frank with you, but very intelligent, level-headed, and not the kind of guy to make up stories. But a couple Christmases ago, at dinner, he said this: "I've seen all kinds of UFOs out on the water at night fishing. Now, I'm not going to go into details about it because y'all probably wouldn't believe me anyway. But all the stuff people say about big old motherships taking up the whole sky, things flying up out of the water, missing time, abductions, all of that, I believe them. And I'll leave it at that." This was told by someone in the Navy. His friend was on a ship deployed during Vietnam. They used the freezers to store the deceased on the ship, and the ship also provided civilian support, like medical. One night, one of the corpsmen had an overnight shift in the clinic and decided to nap on a gurney. When he flipped over to adjust, there was a little girl sitting on the next gurney, facing him. He jumped out of there super quick to find someone to sit with until he felt less creeped out. Another guy was on a ship at sea. The guy had gone on a fantail for a smoke break and saw a guy sitting on the rail. He went to ask if he was okay, and the guy just pushed over the side. They called man overboard to search for him, but never found anyone, and no one came up missing. My grandfather was anchored in a little isolated bay once for the night. He was woken up at 2 a.m. by his dogs going crazy, followed by a deathly woman's scream and the sound of a large chop. In the morning, he rode into the bay and found nothing out of place aside from footprints on the sand. He reported it to the Coast Guard, but they came back and said it wasn't much to worry about, as they'd had a lot of reports over the years saying the same thing. Turns out that before my country was colonized and before access to the bay was cut off, it was inhabited by a local indigenous tribe. One of the stories of the tribe is how the chief caught his wife with a man from another tribe and chased her down to that bay before removing her head. So it's believed that the screaming heard in that bay is that night's incident replaying forever. As a kid, I liked to go swimming in the sea. One day I swam out further than normal until I could not feel the sand underneath my feet anymore. I suddenly felt something grab at my ankle and try to pull me down. I panicked and swam as fast as I could to get back to shore, only it seemed to be getting further away, not closer. It was as if time was not following the usual course. I eventually get back to the shore, but didn't remember getting back there. I was about 10 or 11 years old. I can still feel the pulling around my ankle and the feeling of dread. I have never taken a swim in the seas since. A mermaid, perhaps?
I heard my mom calling me from downstairs, but she wasn't home. So this happened to me a few years ago when I was still living at home. It was late, probably around midnight. I was in my bedroom scrolling on my phone like I usually do. And it was late, and my mom called me from downstairs, and she said, "Hey, can you come here for a sec?" And I remember feeling a little annoyed because I thought that she was asleep already. So I just kind of yelled back, "What?" And she didn't respond. A few seconds later, I hear it again, same voice, "Come here." At that point, I get up and I start walking towards my door, and then that's when my phone buzzes and I get a text from my mom, and it says, "Are you still awake?" So I text back, "What do you need?" And then she sends me, "I just want to let you know I'm not home. I ran to the store." I just stood there staring at my phone because I just heard her voice clear as day coming from downstairs. So now I'm completely frozen standing by my door. And then I hear it again, and it's standing outside of my bedroom door this time. Same voice, but quieter, more controlled. And it says, "Why aren't you coming?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. I started to slowly back away from my door. And then something happened that I still can't explain to this day. It tried again. This time, it didn't sound like my mom. The voice was just slightly off in the tone, a little distorted. It was trying to copy her, but it sounded almost frustrated. It said my name again, but slower. And I didn't answer. I stayed in my bedroom door until I feel like I heard my mom come home. And when she did, I asked her if she came home at any point, and she said no. And the worst part is, I noticed that there were little fingerprint marks on the door handle of my bedroom door the next day. Almost like something had been trying to get into my bedroom.
Listen to the story that I came across from a man named Simon. He titles it, "I Know Now That I Don't Exist." He takes a glitch in the matrix occurrence and he goes deep with it. He says that this story is absolutely terrifying to him. He's heard many encounters about aliens or ghost stories and the like, but one thing always remains common for him, and that's that it could always be explained away by something. But what happened to him, he says there is 100% zero explanation for. And that is terrifying to him. He just wants to preface with, he is a 28-year-old man from Poland. He is very healthy, no medical issues, and he is into marketing and he lives alone. He says he always chooses logic over superstition. So when this happened, it was about 11 p.m. at night and he was getting ready for the next day. And in particular, he was putting together his gym bag because he would go to the gym every other day after work. He wants to be clear that he had no alcohol. He was not tired, and very importantly, he was calm and collected. So he gets everything packed up in the bag and then he heads off to the kitchen where he had some bananas that he bought for the gym. He said that he had a bunch of bananas. It was a group of 4, all connected, and he picked them up. He broke 2 of them off, put them in the refrigerator, and then he put the other 2 in his gym bag. And then he said he went about his evening and he scrolled on his phone, and about 10 minutes later, he had a creeping thought that, you know what, those bananas might go bad quicker in the bag overnight, so he's gonna go and put them back in the refrigerator until the next morning. And to ensure that he doesn't forget them the next day, he took a piece of paper and he wrote himself a little note that just said bananas on it, and he left it on the counter to remind him. And then he went to bed. So then the next day he wakes up and he does his bathroom routine and then he heads into the kitchen and he immediately remembers, I gotta put those bananas in my bag. So he opens the refrigerator and his heart drops. He says that those bananas were back into a bunch of 4, completely connected. He picks them up and he's examining them all around and they are whole again. And he knew that this was 100% some kind of error. He said he just knew in his guts that this should be impossible. And then he slowly peels them apart and he hears the sound and he feels the sensation of them separating. And he said he just knew that yesterday's act of doing this was completely erased. That his mind was speeding down the mental checklist of all of the explanations and he had none. And then he got to the last one, which was completely eradicated when he noticed that note sitting on the countertop that said bananas. He says he 100% knows that yesterday he put them in the bag, 10 minutes later, took them out of the bag and put them back in the refrigerator and wrote himself that note. He also says they were not glued together or taped together or just sitting too close together. They were 100% intact again. He even looked around the refrigerator just to make sure that there weren't any extra bananas in there, and there were none in the refrigerator or in the entire apartment. He also says, remember, he lives alone. There would have been no outside influence, and even if someone would have broken into his apartment, he would have heard them. And then he says, and now the most terrifying part of it all. He says that immediately, and he means immediately, the moment he realized for 100% that that had happened and kind of glitched, like he doesn't live in a real world, that all of a sudden, it didn't even seem to be that big of a deal. He said he even remembers getting ready for work and he caught himself sort of forgetting about it. And then that's what sent a shiver down his spine. He said something, some unknown force, some program encoded into his bones wanted him to forget about it. He goes, like I say, I am a man of reason and I enjoy thinking about things over and over again till they make sense, thinking about what I did or what somebody said. He's like, and if something crazy or weird would have happened, he would have happily freaked out about it. But the problem for him is that he feels like it's just a waste of time. And he found himself forgetting about it during the entire work day until he was on his way to the gym. And then it kind of popped in his head all over again. And then he starts thinking about it and he says, he has definitely experienced similar glitches all throughout his life, but he kind of immediately brushes it off. And he said it's due to that exact feeling, that feeling of almost not having control over just wanting to forget about it. He goes on to say, and that feeling is even more convincing than the glitch itself. And we have no idea about what we really are or about the world we are supposedly living in. He says it might be a computer, it might be a dream. All he knows for 100% certainty is that it's not real. And then he says, even as he writes this, he feels like it's not very important at all. He says it's so not worth mentioning that probably the day after tomorrow he'll forget about all of it. And then he ends it by saying, let this story that has been written against all odds be a memento for something that is soon to be gone. That was freaking heavy. What do you guys think? I gotta know your thoughts in the comments. Kind of some existential stuff right there. I always love a good glitch in the Matrix story. So fascinated with it and never really think of it on that level though. Freaking wild. All right, if you've got your own creepy or glitchy story, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time.
What do you swear to have seen but have no proof? So this girl swears that her and her mom saw somebody that was headless sitting at a pew in church. So this happened in el centro de Monterrey. She said that her and her mom were walking on the sidewalk, and when they looked inside of that church, they saw this headless person sitting on the pew. They both looked at each other with a really shocked face. They didn't want to go inside. They didn't want to go back and see if that's what they were seeing because they both knew they saw the same exact thing. She said that this wasn't at nighttime. It was like in middle of the day, but the church looked like there was nobody else in there, just that headless person. So this guy works in forensics and he swears that he saw a picture of a dead body, but the guy looked exactly like him. He was laying in a bathtub and the decomposition had already started. When he sees the picture, sees that the guy looks like him, he said that he got so scared, he immediately closes that file, but he goes and tells his friend that also works there with him. When his friend is like, go show me the file, let's see it together, he goes back and he couldn't find that file again. But also he admits that he didn't want to see that file again. This girl says that her and her friend went to walk at the beach at night and they saw a really big ball of fire. She admits that she wanted to pull her phone out and start recording, but she says that for some reason her hands wouldn't react, like she was just focused on this ball of fire. They stood there for what felt like 15 minutes staring at this ball of fire, and that is when they started to react and realized that they had actually been staring at this ball of fire for 2 whole hours. Now again, she has no evidence, but she thought that it was really strange. She doesn't know why they stood there for that long amount of time or if something else occurred in those 2 hours. From what I know, in Mexico, those balls of fires are known to be witches, brujas. I don't even want to know what the fuck happened there. This happened at the Miramar Beach in Tamaulipas. I could have sworn that I read a story about that place like maybe 2 weeks ago. I cannot remember. But what do you guys think?
Did you ever hear about the Fresno Nightcrawler? Now, the Fresno Nightcrawler was this really strange creature. First appeared in 2007. There was this man in Fresno, California. He films this strange creature walking through his yard on a security camera. And it basically looked like 2 skinny, tall legs with a head attached. And there was like no torso, no middle part of the body. It was just a head with legs. And it was completely white. And that was the first of many reports of the Fresno Nightcrawler. And it's often described as basically a long pair of legs with a head. And most people don't even see the face. It almost just looks like 2 legs walking. It's described as being pale. A lot of times it's associated with screaming and yelling or even crying. And it's often seen at night outside of people's homes, wandering through their yards. There's been reports all over the world, in Poland, in Yosemite, and even South America. Now, there was a story that came out of the Mount Shasta area. There was this man, he lived near the forest. And he said one night he was awoken to the sound of this crying. And he said it was coming from the woods behind his house. So he grabbed a flashlight and he went outside thinking maybe someone was hurt. And he starts yelling, is anyone there? Does anybody need any help? And that's when he sees these two long, skinny legs with some sort of head attached to it walk right by him. Goes over to the wall of his house, and it started to crawl up the side of the house. He said it got all the way up to the second story, and this thing just turned its sort of head, and it started hissing at him. So he ran in the house, and he calls his friend, come over here, like there's something strange going on, like you need to come here. And he said when his friend got there, they both went outside, they looked all over, but they couldn't find this thing. And he said still, sometimes at night, he hears these strange screams or these crying sounds coming from the backyard behind his house. So is the Fresno Nightcrawler
Story time, and he had an encounter with Charo Negro. Hi, Spooky Girl 831. I'm a fan of your work and wanted to share an experience I had 2 years ago while vacationing in Mexico. Every year in June, my family and I travel to my wife's hometown on the western shore of Lake Chapala. It's a small rural town, rich in tradition and history. The streets are cobblestone, the houses are old, and many of the residents make their living through agriculture, fishing, and cattle raising. We always arrive in time for the town's fiestas in honor of the patron saint, 9 days of celebrations that often last until the early hours of the morning. One of those nights, my family and I were in the plaza enjoying the festivities. Around 1 a.m., they decided to head home because they were tired, but I stayed behind with some friends. At about 3 a.m., I finally decided to walk home. None of my friends lived in the same direction as me, so I walked alone. My house was 6 blocks from the plaza, and the road was dark, quiet, and dimly lit by old street lamps. As I walked, the loudest sounds were my boots hitting the cobblestones and a cricket chirping somewhere nearby. Halfway home, the cricket suddenly went silent. When I turned onto the street where my house was, the air grew colder and even quieter. I kept walking. Then I heard it, the sound of hooves. A large horse turning onto the same street behind me. The hoofbeats grew louder, like the rider was getting closer. I stepped aside to let the horse pass, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. No rider, no horse, just an empty, dim street. I ran the last block home. When I got inside, everyone was asleep. I didn't tell anyone what happened, but the rest of the night, I heard a horse stomping outside the house. Slow, intentional, like it was waiting. I was too freaked out to check, and I barely slept. The next morning, I went to the corner store where the locals gather for coffee and conchas. I told one of the older men what I had experienced. He told me it was the Charo Negro, a tortured soul who made a deal with the devil to collect souls. Another local confirmed it and said I was lucky. He told me about a man in town who had encountered the Charo and now can't speak and needs around-the-clock care. They also said that on some nights the Charo walks through town and stops outside certain houses. And if someone looks out the window and sees him, they're never the same afterward. So it's a good thing I didn't look out that night. Ever since then, I've never walked home alone after dark. According to the locals, the Charo Negro is connected to the devil. He appears at night riding his horse and asks if you need anything. He can grant you whatever you desire, but you must only ask for something you truly need in that moment. You're safe if you ask for water when you're thirsty, food when you're hungry, or medicine when you're sick. But if you ask for anything driven by greed or tied to one of the 7 deadly sins, the legend says he takes your soul. I hope you enjoy the story. If you decide, so this is from Anonymous Wildcat because he's from Watsonville. So woo, go Wildcats! I was a Wildcat too. I loved this story. It was so descriptive. I loved how he described the cobblestone streets and how he walked down the street, the cricket that he heard. Like, you're a really good writer. If you have more stories, please send me more because they're so fun to read. Also, I have never heard of the Charo Negro. If anyone else has, I'd love to learn more, or if anyone else has ever had an encounter or a family member or friend encounter this. I'm really interested in this entity. And also, I'm so glad you didn't look out the window because that's so scary, especially because people in town who did apparently have had really negative effects. And also, the guy who has round the clock care, I'm really curious if he maybe asked for something greedy. Maybe he did see the guy and asked for a greedy wish. Let me know in the comments what you guys think and send me your stories.
Hey y'all, it is time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your spooky stories. Add me on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube, same handle. Without further ado. This story comes from Mark. He will be tagged on Facebook. I'm not sure what his handle is on TikTok. Now, he sent me a few spooky stories. He said he's had a very interesting life growing up in the Appalachians. We're going to get into 2 of those stories tonight. The first one happened when he was around 5 years old, living at his house in Erin, Tennessee. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He said that he and his family had a burn pile about 100 yards from his house. One day, he and his dad, they hadn't been out there in like a week. They're taking some trash out there to burn. His dad is carrying the bag of trash and Mark is walking beside his dad. When they get out there, they see just very suddenly what Mark said he can only think to describe as what looked like a genie coming out of a lamp. He said it was like this bluish gray, like smoke color, and that it was like very small at the bottom. Almost it's like it's morphing out of thin air, and that it got wider and bigger as it went up the body. And at the top, it like morphed into this torso, this human torso with arms and like a head. And Mark said that his dad was not a very fit man, but that when they saw that, they were both so shocked and terrified that his dad drops the trash, picks Mark up like in a football like sidearm, and runs as fast as he can 100 yards back to the house. Now, do they actually think that it is a genie coming out of a lamp? No, but he doesn't know how else to describe what it looked like, as it was like manifesting out of thin air. To this day, he still doesn't know what to make of it. Now, the second story happened to Mark and his friend when they were about 15 years old. So again, in the Appalachians, they're in the woods one day exploring this cave. Outside of this cave is like a bluff, and they can walk off of this bluff down this like steep hill. So Mark and his friend walking down this steep hill, when suddenly a good-sized stick hits Mark in the back of the head with such impact that it actually caused the stick to snap in half. When Mark is like, "What the hell?" and he turns around, they see about 75 yards up this hill a Bigfoot standing there looking at them. He said that it was around their height, which was about 6 foot tall, but a lot broader, and that they could see the entire left side of its body, its face, hand, arm, leg. It obviously was the one that threw the stick, and they're braver than me. They decide, after standing there and making eye contact with it for a minute, to try to get a closer look and check things out. So they begin walking up this hill, but it's so steep that every now and then they're having to take their eyes off of the Bigfoot to keep their footing, right? When they look back up, before they make it to the top of the hill, it's gone. Well, guys, that is going to conclude our spooky story for the evening. Sorry for the later upload than planned. If you have not checked out my recently uploaded personal scary story on YouTube, exclusively YouTube, why not? Go check that one out. I've not posted one of my own personal scary stories in well over a year. Y'all stay tuned for some more spooky stories and let me know what you think about this in the comments. I, for one, 100% believe in Bigfoot. Even my papa has a Bigfoot story that he always told us growing up, and he was not one to tell tall tales.
In the early morning hours of December 3rd, 1921, a 62-year-old woman named Augusta Roblin lay awake in her bedroom inside of her daughter's house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Augusta had lived with her daughter now for about a year. She had moved in after her husband had passed away. She just really hated being alone, and at night in particular, it was difficult to sleep sometimes. Just the weight of the loneliness was very intense. And also, Augusta was known to have really visceral bad dreams, and so that, combined with loneliness, made living alone really awful. So here she was, living with her daughter. But on this particular night, Augusta, she was wide awake in bed because she had had one of these awful nightmares, but she knew she could not tell her daughter about it. Now, normally one of the ways that Augusta would cope with these terrible nightmares, even when she was living alone, is she would get in touch with her daughter and they would talk about it. They would try to figure out if there was meaning in this awfulness of these nightmares. And sometimes they felt like they did find deeper meaning, and it sort of was cathartic for Augusta. But on this night, the dream she had just had, this nightmare, this visceral, awful nightmare, she knew, based on what she believed it meant, she absolutely could not tell her daughter anything about it. She had to hide it at all costs. In the dream Augusta had just had, she kind of came to, and she was in her daughter's basement. So in the basement of the house she was in right now. And in front of her on the ground were these two perfectly circular, very, very deep holes, just that went straight into the ground. And so Augusta, she found herself walking towards the edge and looking over. And she saw it was like this unbelievable abyss in each hole. It's like it went on into infinity. But despite this innate fear she had for these holes, she sat down on the edge of one of these holes and basically dangled her feet over this, cataclysmic abyss below her. And as she's sitting there like a child dangling her feet, these two men in dark clothes, they wander over out of the shadows and they walk behind Augusta. They don't interact with her, and they go to the other hole, the hole that is next to Augusta. And she looks at these men, and they're not looking at her. They're doing something. They're clearly in the middle of some sort of act. And they pull this huge carpet seemingly out of nowhere, and the two men stretch it out over this other hole next to Augusta, and they lay it over the hole. And as soon as Augusta saw that, she suddenly understood what was happening here, and she was horrified. So she woke up. And now here she was, knowing that based on what she just saw in her mind's eye in this horrible nightmare, that she could never share it with anyone, that she would live with the secret. So Augusta would eventually fall back to sleep that night, and she would get up in the morning, and she would not tell her daughter, Henrietta, anything about this dream she had had. She played it off like everything was just fine. Over the course of the day, Henrietta, even though she didn't say anything, began to notice that her mom was just acting really weird, like something was on her mind. And finally, at night, when the two of them sat down for dinner, this is basically, 24 hours, give or take, from when Augusta had this dream, right? They're sitting down for dinner, and Augusta, she's not eating, she seems totally, disconnected, and she just seems off. And Henrietta's like, "Mom, what is going on with you?" And Augusta, at this point, realized she must be giving off very negative vibes here, and so she told her daughter, "Don't worry, I'm fine, I'm sorry, I'm not hungry, everything's fine, I'm just feeling a little bit off, so everything's fine." But Henrietta realistically did not believe her mom, but she didn't push her. She said, okay. And they finished their dinner, and then before long, Augusta had gone to bed. But the next morning, when Henrietta got up, she went downstairs expecting to see her mom, but Augusta was nowhere to be found. And so again, feeling kind of concerned about her mom's behavior, she went to Augusta's bedroom to check on her, and she found her mom seeming really weak and lethargic and just totally out of it, laying in bed. And she asked her mom, really, what's going on with you? Are you not feeling well? What's happening here? And her mom just said, I just don't want to get out of bed. I'm feeling under the weather. I'm going to stay here. But even though Henrietta could see her mom was clearly downplaying this, she just felt like there's too many red flags. So she called a doctor. And a doctor came to the house, and a doctor examined Augusta, and they determined that, it wasn't really clear exactly what was going on with her. Clearly she's not feeling great, but the only thing they found was that her heart sounded a little bit weak. And so the doctor suggested that Augusta just, rest, have some water, eat some food, and just stay in bed, and you should get better. But despite Augusta doing what the doctor said and basically remaining on bed rest, she didn't get better. And in fact, Henrietta, her daughter, is watching, and she's clearly seeing that not only is her mother deteriorating physically, but she was also becoming more and more despondent and sort of disconnected emotionally. It was like she was drifting off into some other world that Henrietta was not a part of, and she was just so worried about her mom. And so finally, on December 7th, so this is for reference, 5 days after Augusta had that visceral nightmare that she felt like she couldn't share with anybody, Henrietta went into her mother's room and she sat on the edge of the bed and she said to her mom, "You gotta tell me what's going on. It seems like there's something else here that you're not sharing with me. You gotta tell me. I don't care what it is, but I gotta know." Augusta, when she heard her daughter saying this, she sort of thought about trying to keep doing the same thing she was doing, which was, basically say everything's fine and push her daughter off. But she could tell Henrietta was not going to take that for an answer. And so Augusta sighed and she said, "I had that dream again. Except this time, I watched the procedure." Now, to us, this is, cryptic and weird and doesn't really mean anything. But to Henrietta, who understood what her mom was talking about, she was completely horrified. It would turn out Augusta really did have horrible nightmares that plagued her for at least the last year or so. But it was like a recurring nightmare. She didn't have different variations. It basically was the exact same nightmare that just really upset her. The way it went is, she would open her eyes in this nightmare, and in front of her would be these two bottomless pits, these huge holes in the ground. Now, she wouldn't know what these holes are, but she'd be able to tell that she was in an environment that she recognized. One time she saw that she was in her sister-in-law's garden. Another time she saw she was in her neighbor's backyard. She knew where she was, but she didn't understand these holes. But in this nightmare, she would always walk up to the holes, and then she, not two men who walked in, but she would take a rug out and cover up one of those holes, and then she'd wake up. Now, on its face, this does not sound like a particularly frightening dream. But there's a connection to the real world that made it frightening. Every time Augusta would have these nightmares, the person who lived at the property where the dream took place, the sister-in-law's garden, the neighbor's backyard, when she would have that dream, she would come to, and then within a couple of days, that person would die, usually inexplicably. It was like a harbinger of doom that these dreams represented who was going to die next. And so every time she had this dream, she knew someone's going to die. But in that last dream she had, the one, 5 days earlier that scared her so badly, she knew she couldn't tell Henrietta. In that dream, it was the first time she, Augusta, didn't perform the procedure, i.e. putting the rug over one of the holes. Those two men came over and they did it. And Augusta realized she's sitting with her feet in the other hole, and she's realizing she's in her daughter's basement. That's where this dream's taking place. This must mean she, Augusta, is next. And wouldn't you know it, just days after telling her daughter about this, within 2 weeks of having this dream, Augusta died of heart failure in her daughter's house.
Australia has its version of the Skinwalker, and the Aboriginal people, they refer to it as a mimi spirit. Some people have also called it the Mim Light, and there's even a cryptid known as the Bunyam, which is said to be the shape-shifting being who lives in water. Now, it differs from the American version because it's a lot of times seen as a ball of light, an orb of light, and it often lures people deep into the bush. Now, this is a story that comes from Victoria along the Great Coastal Highway. This boy said that when he was younger, he lived near the Great Coastal Highway up against the bush. And he said when he was a young boy, he was in the backyard and he was playing alone. Well, his mom was inside the kitchen cooking dinner. And he said all of a sudden, he hears his mom's voice say, "Come inside, right now." So he ran as fast as he can. He goes in the house and he comes in and he's, Mom, what do you want? What do you want? And his mom's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, you called me in." And she goes, I didn't call you in. I've been inside here cooking dinner. And he goes, "No, seriously, you just said my name and told me to come inside." And his mom's like, "No, I did not." And he's like, "Please, Mom, just tell me, you're joking with me because I heard your voice, tell me to come inside." And finally she said, "Oh, maybe I did, to comfort him." Later that night, he said he's in his bedroom and he was sleeping. And he said he woke up because he heard this scratching sound. And he said it just kept getting louder and louder. And then he would hear kind of like a tapping sound. And he said he couldn't figure out where that sound was coming from. At first he thought maybe it was a possum like, because sometimes animals get in the house, but it just kept getting louder and louder. Finally, he realizes it's coming from the direction of his window. So he goes over to his window and he pulls over the curtains. And he said, standing outside of his window, like tapping on the window, was this very tall, pale white, man-looking creature with solid black eyes just staring at him. And he said he just kind of like started waving his hand towards the window. He starts screaming. His mom comes running in and is like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he's like, there's something outside my window. There's something outside my window. His mom looks out the window. There's no one there. But he said his mom was a little freaked out because she seen like scratch marks on the windowsill. And she could tell something was trying to get in the window. So she told him, you're sleeping in my room tonight. Now, this next story comes from the outback. There were these two guys, and they said they were going on a camping trip. They were driving deep through the outback, down this, just sandy, windy road. And the one guy said as he was driving, he noticed something ahead up in the road. So he slowed the vehicle down, and as he got a little bit closer, he could see it was a dingo. And he said this dingo wasn't with a pack, it was alone, and it was just chilling by the side of the road, staring at their car. And he said he slowly drove past it, and it just kept eye contact with him. And he said something seemed like really off about this dingo. And so he continued on driving, and when he looked in his mirror, it was gone. Well, finally it started to get dark, and they arrived at their campsite. And he said, there was just absolutely nothing around except for a few like rock formations. So they set up their tent for the night, and they make a big fire. He said they were sitting around the campfire, and they started to talk about that dingo that he had seen on the road. And he was like, that was really weird, wasn't it? And he said right as they started to talk about it, all of a sudden, this Aboriginal man, like, came up onto their campsite. And they said he just slowly walked up to him and then stopped and, like, just stood still and was looking, like, off in the distance. They said he said something in Aborigines, and he pointed in a direction, and then he turned around and walked away. And so, like, him and his friend, they're just kind of like, what just happened? Like, what was that all about? So they were a little freaked out, but they were like, maybe he just lives around here or something. So they go to bed for the night, they get in their tents, and they said they were woken in the middle of the night to just this beautiful voice singing. And they were like, it was unlike anything they'd ever heard. So they unzipped the tent, they go outside, and they said off in the horizon, they could see this very bright ball of light, and it was glowing like, almost like a metallic gray to a bluish color. And they said it was just sort of moving back and forth, up and down. And the one guy, he starts walking towards this light, and his buddy's like, no, don't go near it, don't go near it. And he's like, I have to see this thing. And he said his buddy, got a little distance ahead of him, and all of a sudden, this light flickered out, and he said at the same time, his friend was gone. And, he got back in the vehicle, he left, and he traveled all the way back to the nearest town, like, reported his friend missing. They searched for weeks, could not find this guy, and still to this day, they have not found this person. Now, this last story, it also comes from Southeast Australia. And there were these two friends who said that they went hiking in the bush, and they stumbled upon like this beautiful watering hole. So they were going to go swimming. Well, one of the guys says, I need to go somewhere off here and find like a place to use the bathroom. So the other guy just kind of stood there by the watering hole. And he said all of a sudden he sees this beautiful woman with no clothes in the water. And he said she was just kind of twirling her hair, and she was looking at him and smiling and like waving. And he said all of a sudden she started like waving for him to come to the water. And he didn't know why, but he said he felt like entranced. He started walking towards the water. He gets within about 3 steps of the water. And he said all of a sudden his friend yells at him, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get away from the water. And he said that's when he turned around and looked. And he said what was this beautiful woman was now this very large black looking fish type thing with, arms. And this thing just had its mouth open, sticking out of the water. And he said all of a sudden it just submerged itself and disappeared into the watering hole. And so him and his friend were we're out of here, and they took off. So what do you think? Have you ever experienced something strange in Australia?
Let's read another scary story. This happened years ago. Since then, my mom has always insisted that I cover the mirrors in my room because according to Feng Shui, it's not good to leave them uncovered, as they can act as a portal for spirits. I had heard about the portal idea before, but for a while I thought it was silly, even though I believe in paranormal phenomena. Then something happened that changed my attitude. A few years ago, on that particular day, I bought a larger flower pot shaped like a head. I absolutely loved it and was so happy about it. It looked exactly like something I would have found on Pinterest. I placed it on the cabinet next to my bed, right in the middle. It's important to mention that I'm quite messy, so the pot was surrounded by all kinds of random things. A tabletop mirror, books, glasses, and other clutter. It wouldn't have been possible to knock it down without everything else falling with it. That night, I forgot to cover my mirror and went to sleep. I'm a very deep sleeper and almost never wake up during the night. But that night, I woke up to a loud crashing sound. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the foot of my bed, where a tall black shadow was standing. I couldn't see any details, just a dark shape, darker than the darkness of my room, standing completely still as if it were watching me sleep. I don't know why, but I didn't feel fear. Since I had heard the loud crash, I was more focused on what could have made that sound. So I decided to act as if I hadn't seen anything and looked around more carefully. When I looked beside my bed, I saw the pot on the floor as if it had been gently placed there. It wasn't tipped over and nothing else was around it. When I looked closer, I saw that it was broken exactly in half, in a straight horizontal line across the middle, as if it had been cleanly cut. I know I didn't knock it down, because if I had, it wouldn't have landed like that, and everything else on the cabinet would have fallen too. But everything was exactly as I left it. Logically, the other objects should have fallen together with the vase. I checked the time on my phone, and it was exactly 3 a.m. That's when I felt something strange, like something wasn't right. But I was tired and decided I didn't want to know what was going on, so I just went back to sleep. The next morning, I examined the pot in my cabinet more carefully, but to this day, I don't know how it could have happened. I'm sure I didn't knock it down. In the morning, I even checked, and from my bed, I wouldn't have been able to reach it at all. After that, my mom called an energy cleanser who removed entities and negative energies from me and from the house. I don't know exactly what was done, I'm not very knowledgeable about these things, but since then, I haven't experienced anything similar. For me, this was confirmation that I don't believe in the paranormal for no reason. Since then, I've been even more interested in the topic. I'm glad that if something like this happened to me, it happened in a way where I wasn't harmed and it wasn't terrifying beyond belief. And since then, I never forget to cover my mirror. Even though it broke, I kept the vase so I can attach a picture of it. Oh yeah, it's like cleanly cut. That's so crazy. It's so crazy that nothing else fell on the floor as well. I think that's the craziest part of all of this. But I'm sorry about your vase. Like, it is really cute. It does look like it's from Pinterest, but I hope you found a replacement for it. Thank you again, Punny, for sending this one in. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, as always, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
The story was sent to us by a paramedic who we're just going to call B, and B said that they worked as a paramedic in a small Texas town. The population was under 1,000 people. He said that their service was hospital-based, so they not only responded to routine 911 calls, but would also do like interpatient facility transfers to larger places like Houston. And the hospital that they operated out of was more of a bandage station, not really a hospital capable of anything. They said that they had 20 patient rooms and 6 ER beds. Said that there wasn't much to this facility, this hospital, but it definitely had history. The hospital didn't even have a morgue. The morgue had actually been converted into a kitchen. Also on the same property as this hospital was a retirement home, which would allow the elderly to age in place. Said that over the years, these patients in this assisted living retirement facility would independently of each other talk about seeing a little blonde-haired boy and a little blonde-haired girl running up and down the hallways. He said that staff mostly just brushed this off. They said when you work in healthcare, things like this happen. You just hear stories, especially if you're working in an older facility. Then Hurricane Harvey hits, and B said that their families, the first responders' families, had evacuated due to the mandatory evacuation, but personnel had stayed behind just to answer calls and keep the service running. So since their families were gone, everyone stayed inside of that hospital facility. Didn't have any patients, so everyone pretty much got their own room. He says that everyone is in and out. They are sleeping when they can. Calls are coming in. They're answering them. Basically just running nonstop. Rescue calls, transfers, wellness checks. He said that she was going on like hour 26 of no sleep. And her partner make it back from a call. Like I said, she's on hour 26. She is exhausted. They both go to their respective rooms to just try to get a few minutes of sleep before the next call comes in. So B lays down, closes her eyes, and then she hears a patient call bell go off. At this time, there are no patients in the hospital. The hospital is just being used to house the first responders. So she's thinking, I must be really exhausted, or maybe I dreamed that. I don't know, but I'm just going to ignore it. She opens her eyes just so she can adjust, get comfortable, try to get some sleep, and she says that she looks into the corner of the room, and standing in the corner of her room is a little blonde-haired girl and a little blonde-haired boy. She said that they weren't doing anything. They were just standing there, just staring at her. And she said that they didn't make her feel afraid. It didn't feel nefarious or like it was anything evil. She said the only feeling that she had was confusion because she just felt like she was seeing something that she should not be seeing. While she is staring at them, they just vanish into thin air. Just gone, no sound, no nothing. Just like they were never there. And after these kids disappear, another call comes in, so B has to gather herself, get up, and head out for another call. She said she's just thinking, I must be exhausted. I don't know. Maybe I was dreaming, whatever. Pushes it to the back of her mind, compartmentalizes it because she says that that's just what you have to do in that line of work. It is what it is. She and her partner head out to take the call. While they're on their way there, they are talking. He's kind of like, well, did you get like any rest at all? She's like, no, actually, what's weird is I actually saw a blonde-haired little boy and a blonde-haired little girl standing in my room. So no sleep. Partner gets really quiet and kind of just stares ahead and says to her, I just saw them standing in my room too. After this night, B nor her partner ever see these two kids again. B said that that hospital has since been torn down and rebuilt, so she has no idea if they are still there. If they are not, she does hope that they have found peace. So that's tonight's story. I hope that everyone has a really wonderful evening, a really beautiful weekend. Love a first responder story. If you have a story that you would like to send me, there is an email in my bio, or you're welcome to send me a message, whatever's easiest for you. Please send them. Love reading them. The weirder, the better. Hope that everyone has a wonderful evening.
The tea is hot with the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and if you have not seen this, yes, I was featured on TMZ on the 18th. This was the day before the video of Taylor and Dakota going at it in 2023, where she throws a stool at him, was leaked, and the executives of The Bachelorette decided to not air her season at all. It has been canceled for a good reason. Now, here's what pisses me off about the whole entire situation. They knew that she had a domestic from 2023. This was incredibly public. There was no reason that they did not know about this. She's a fucking reality star, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? But the video was leaked a couple of days before the show was set to air. In the video, it shows her absolutely beating the shit out of Dakota. And you see this right here? That is her throwing a fucking stool at him. She throws 2 stools. Her daughter is present. We broke the story sharing a video of violent 2023 confrontation between Paul and her ex, Dakota Mortensen, hours after the release of the video. ABC announced that they canceled her season. Several companies, including Meta and Cinnabon, have cut ties with Taylor as well. Of course, because it looks really bad. My problem is they never should have allowed her to be the Bachelorette to begin with. This was an absolute fucking shit show. If you watch The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, you saw her and Dakota going back and forth the entire season. They are incredibly toxic. They talk about it on the show, how toxic they are together, the both of them, and how they both intentionally do things to each other. It's a mess. Apparently, her ex-husband and Dakota were seen at the courthouse after the video came out, saying that they were both requesting protective orders from Taylor. All of the girls were like, you need to seek help. It's been ridiculous and absurd, but it's just getting worse and worse. So they decided to stop filming. They had completely stopped filming season 6 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives until Taylor went and got help. And it has been a downward spiral since then. Now, here's the thing. I am not a fucking fan of Dakota. I think that he's incredibly manipulative, and they are incredibly toxic for each other. She is also a grown woman that is making very piss poor decisions. You see that on the show. You see all of that on social medias, on everything. So the fact that she was chosen to be the Bachelorette is absolutely insane to me. Apparently what happened was she also ended up with one of the guys from the Bachelorette. She chose somebody, then broke up with him almost immediately after, and then her and Dakota got together again, and then had some type of physical altercation, whatever. And then things have been really, really bad since then. We cannot be surprised though. We have been watching Taylor and Dakota go back and forth for however many seasons, 5 seasons now on The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and they keep pulling each other back. One does one thing to the other to get the other one hooked, and then they get back together, and then they just do this mess all over again. Why they hadn't thought to stop filming and say, we can't do this anymore. I don't know. But here we are, and everything has completely blown up. I saw that she was allegedly taking a hiatus. It's probably good that she does. But she was doing interviews right before the Bachelorette was supposed to be released. She was even doing interviews, I believe, the morning of the segment that I did. In my opinion, it's incredibly disappointing for ABC to have chose her, knowing her history. You see her on the shows. I mean, come on. Her social media is everything. Knowing the violent past and everything, choosing her to be on there, that is a liability on their part. And if something were to happen and she were to explode on the show for some reason, whatever, they are to be held liable. They can absolutely be held liable because they knew about her violent past and the history that she has with like Dakota and all the things that she's went through on the Secret Lives. It was literally this one specific time was on the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Like, they showed her. Like, they showed the clip of, like, cops showing up at the fucking house. So it was very known. So for them to, like, just go on, film the whole fucking season, and then act like they're going to release it, and only when that video gets released and it's really shown how bad that was, they decide to completely shut the whole shit down, not release it, and then now everybody's cutting ties with her. That is bullshit to me. That's all I have to say on it right now. I will be probably doing another video addressing it tomorrow whenever I get back from being out of town, because shit just continues to unfold literally every single day. And there's stuff I feel like I'm missing that I didn't even add in this video. So sorry.
I haven't been online much to tell my ghost stories this past week and a half, 2 weeks, because my son got really sick. And then he got strep on top of it. So I've been dealing with that. Also, full disclosure, I got some work done on my face, the whole face. It's my money, my choice. I don't want to hear about it, but I am going to be a little swollen and bruised for the next week. Okay? For the love of everything spooky, just be nice. Okay, I know how I look. I look insane. It's gonna look insane. I've been getting Botox and filler for a very, very long time. This is just the puffy period, okay? I've got life preservers on my face. I know. But I'm gonna share a little ghost story because I feel bad that it's been so long and I have so much to talk about. But I'm going to share a little one today. Just a little taste. So, obviously, in Japan, the only shower in this home of ours was in the basement. And as I've talked about before, I will only take a shower in the basement if my mother is already in the basement as well. She's in the bedroom folding laundry. Now, my whole childhood, this woman was either folding laundry or vacuuming. She's always cleaning. She's always stress cleaning. She's always stressed out. So she's in her bedroom folding laundry. I'm right next to her in the shower. I turn on the water. I hop on in. I'm taking a shower. Everything's fine. I can hear her folding laundry. I'm talking to her. Can hear her opening and closing drawers. Halfway through my shower, I hear this and I call out to her. I was like, "Hey, is that you?" And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "No, it's fine, never mind. Because whatever, it's probably her." A few moments later, my head feels really hot and inflated, like a hot air balloon, and I get this really weird pressure in my right ear. And I remember being in the shower being like ugh. Right after that, the lighting in the bathroom changes. Now, the only natural light in the bathroom is what streams in from the bedroom window. There is one window in the bedroom, and it streams in. But there's two doorways. There's the bedroom doorway and the bathroom doorway. They're like 2 feet away from each other. And in my doorway, in the shower doorway, bathroom doorway, the lighting gets blocked out completely, and it's dark. And I remember turning off the water and calling out to my mom. I was like, Mom, Mom! I don't hear anything from her. And I peek my head out of the shower, and there's this big, tall, black mist blocking out the entire door frame. And I grabbed my towel, and I very sloppily threw it over me just to cover the bits, and I ran through this fucking mist to my mom in the bedroom. And as I ran through this mist, it felt like, I've described this before, but it felt like staticky cobwebs. It felt like static cobwebs. And I get to my mom, and I go, Mom, Mom, Mom. And she's like, what is it? She's like, why are you out of the shower? I was like, the mist just blocked out the whole shower doorway, like the bathroom doorway. I was like, did you see it? And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, the light changed. Didn't you see it? And she was like, no, I didn't see anything. And I remember fixing my towel, going straight up to my bedroom. I was like, fuck this. She's fine. I'll leave her there. She didn't see anything anyway. I bailed on my mom, ran up the stairs, ran up to my bedroom, shut my door, and stayed up there for a little bit to collect myself and get dressed. Because I know what I saw. I know what I felt. Apparently, she didn't witness any of it. And I was like, okay, well, why is it targeting me? Why is it just me? Fucking still hate that bathroom to this day. I'll never forget that feeling. That feeling of running through staticky cobwebs. It's just gross. And why didn't she see anything, you guys? What do you mean you didn't see the light get blocked out in the shower? Like, what do you... The way it's built is when you go down the basement stairs, to the left is the bedroom door frame, like a 2-foot hallway. To the right is a shower, a sink, and the bathroom door frame. What do you mean you didn't notice one of the door frames was blacked out?
This story is actually a story about my uncle, who recently passed away, actually. This guy is probably the most fertile person I've known in my entire life. I'm talking about every woman that he gets with, they end up getting pregnant by him. This dude passed away recently and left 11 kids behind. But there was one woman that he actually, got with that we knew our entire life. And we, we actually, look at her like she was like part of the family. She was an aunt, and, we treated her like family. No matter what he was doing outside of his door, getting with other different women, getting them all pregnant. She couldn't get pregnant by him, but she was the wife material. They lived together, they had a life together, but they couldn't bring a kid into that part of the family, the main part of the family that we know of. This lady was so sweet. No matter what was going on with the whole relationship, we always treated her like she was family. She's always wanted to have a kid on her own, like a family, with this guy, no matter how many other kids that he had. And they tried to go to different doctors. They tried to go to different cities in Haiti or different parts of Haiti, trying everything that they could naturally. Until, she actually brought up to my uncle that she once actually was pregnant. And then she gave birth to the baby, but in about 3 months, the baby actually passed away. And then she was always grieving that loss on her own, you know, like she kept it a secret. And then she brought the idea to my uncle that maybe, you know, if she goes to a voodoo priest that she knows, you know, she can actually talk to him, pay him, and then he can actually like do some kind of ritual or some kind of prayers or some kind of like, I don't know, magic for her to reach out to the soul of that baby, you know, and actually convince that baby to be born again, you know, like for a second chance, so she can actually get pregnant by the same soul of that baby that she actually lost. Do you get where I'm going? Literally. Do you see how dangerous that is? Do you see like the massive of darkness, of portal that she tried to open? And guess what? She actually did. So, my uncle actually took on that offer. And then I remember, because like the whole thing was actually in the open to the whole family about like what they're about to do, because they want to get pregnant so bad. They want a baby in that family so bad, and she cannot get pregnant, and she feels like it's because she lost a baby, you know, like at that early of an age, you know, like 3-month-old baby. Then she thinks that's why like she never moved on from that baby. The baby never moved on, never really like detached, you know. There was like never like a detachment. She felt like if she goes to a voodoo priest, she can attract that same soul, you know, like to, you know, like into the dynamic of the family, and then give birth to the same soul. But like it's a different baby, but same soul, you know. So she actually managed to drag my uncle to that idea, and then they went to a place where she was actually born and raised. It's called Guamon. If you're Haitian, you know where exactly I'm talking about. And the English translation is Big Mountain, but it's Guamon for us, you know, like in our language. So I remember, like even myself as well, like my mom actually dragged me up there with her, my uncle, and my dad, a couple of like other family members. We went up there for the first time. You have to park your car like underneath the mountain. It's called Big Mountain for a reason. The people actually live on top of the mountain. And then when I tell you, like when you get up there, it's like a different village. You feel like you're like in the 1800s. You know, everything is like, there's no technology, there's nothing. These people, like, they dress, they live, they breed like it was like the 1800s. There's no growth at all. And then they believe in everything. They believe the tree is speaking to us. They believe the sun, you know, brings different like life and energy to us. Like at night, they feel like if you look at the stars, certain things gonna happen to you. Very fascinating, especially to me as a young kid. And I remember that day that they decided that they were gonna go to the voodoo priest. My uncle did not like the idea, but he ended up like, you know, just like follow on, because again, he got so many kids with other women, so he just wanted to have one kid with that lady, and they can be a complete family. So they decided to do that. You know, they went around, you know, they went to the voodoo king, and then they did what they had to do, pay him and everything. And he said, you know what, tonight you're gonna go home, you're gonna go do this, you know, be private, you know, get with your wife and do whatever you guys gotta do, you know, and wait about, you know, like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you know, you're gonna be pregnant. And just like that, she was actually pregnant. Oh my God, miracle. Everyone is happy. The entire family is happy for her. Everyone is just like, like I'm talking about, like they were just like, this was a miracle, like literally a miracle by God, that she is pregnant and she's gonna give birth to the same soul, you know, but like different baby. She's happy. She's reconnecting with the baby that she lost, you know, when that baby was 3 months old. Okay, long story short, baby is born. Okay, baby is doing just fine. I remember I used to babysit him. A older cousin of mine as well. We like used to, you know, babysit him together. Like, kid, wonderful little kid, beautiful boy. You know, everyone loves him. So sweet, so calm, so funny. Everything that you could actually get from like a very happy, healthy baby, that was him. And I remember when everything was falling apart too. This is where it gets all sad. There was like reports of like dark shadows, you know, like being seen wherever the baby was. There was report of like, you know, them, like my aunt and my uncle, like they literally beating on each other, like trying to unalive one another. It got really bad in that home. And then, very long story short, guys, I can go into more details maybe in part 2, maybe in the comments. When the baby turned about two years, or maybe 2.5 years, it was myself and my cousin who were left behind, and we were very young as well, very young, babysitting the baby. And we had a well. You know what a well is in Haiti? Like usually, like where we get our fresh water, you know, it's a truck that comes in and they like dump water in a big well, clean well, you know, and then it's usually covered by a little gate. Somehow the gate was left open, and me and my cousin were actually inside. And then like at a certain point that we started to feel like very like unease, like something was actually in the house with us. We were supposed to be babysitting him, you know, and all of a sudden we didn't hear anything from him at all. He was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until like, you know, like something tells us like, you know, like something must have happened, because he's usually running around the house. He's playing with like different toys, and he loved to play with spoons, you know, like with bowls and like everything they can find in the kitchen. Like he's making noise, but like all the noise stopped, and then the house got like really, really cold. And we stepped out in the yard looking for him everywhere. We couldn't find him until, you know, like my mom, my dad, everyone came home looking for him. Couldn't find him. I'm talking about the entire neighborhood looking for him, guys. Until my dad would decided, like, you know what? We look for him everywhere where he could be alive. We can't find him. The one place that we haven't checked is in that well. It was a big well, actually, very deep, I remember. I would just remember my dad screamed out of his lung, and he fell on the floor, fainted, literally out of consciousness. And then everyone rushed up to my dad and checked the well to see what did he figured, what did he found out in that well. Was 2 little legs literally pushing out away from the, you know, like where you cannot see the end of the well to like the gate. And then it was a neighbor of ours who actually grabbed the little leg and pulled the little leg out, and there you go. Unfortunately, it's the baby. It's the baby. Completely gone. Literally. Drawn. You know, apparently he fell in the well. I don't know if he was the one who opened the gate by himself. The gate was so heavy. A baby could not like literally open that gate by himself. Even myself, I couldn't do it. It was always an adult who would actually be there to open the gate, and then would grab water as it's needed. And you know, till today we don't know what happened to the baby. And she never were able to get pregnant ever again. They tried again, like for years. My uncle is now gone. That lady is still alive. She still doesn't have any kid at all. And she never went back to that voodoo priest. And then she's always like, she's actually an advocate to other people now to never try to reach out to a past loved ones. You know, never. Just let them come to you if they need to. She made a big mistake reaching out to this past, you know, baby, the love, you know, like the connection that she had with this baby. It's really like, you know, the mother soul and then the young soul. And then she's trying to reach out to that baby. And then it did not end well. So stop trying to do that, guys. It can be really dangerous. Sometimes you can actually open a portal to a different soul. And it might be very, like I'm talking about, very evil soul. And most of the times, even if it's just, you know, like it just becomes successful, that you actually end up, you know, reaching out to your loved ones, and you're trying to do that type of ritual, it's still not gonna end up well, neither for you or, you know, like whoever you're trying to reach out to. Let them go. Let them reach out to you if they need to.
Get ready with me while I tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I lived in a haunted house until I was about 7 years old. Every man in my family, my dad, relatives, even me, we all experienced things repeatedly. But my mom, she never saw a single thing, and for the longest time, she thought we were all just imagining it. Until this happened. I was 5 years old, and my room looked exactly how you'd expect a 5-year-old boy's room to look. Toy cars scattered everywhere, one of those little road pattern rugs. I loved those. I would put little houses on it, and I would put my dolls on it, and it was like a whole little neighborhood. Legos in bins, very normal kid stuff. That night, I went to sleep as usual. Nothing felt off, nothing was strange, but at some point in the middle of the night, I woke up, and I don't know why. It was one of those random wake-ups where everything feels wrong as soon as you open your eyes. Too quiet, too still. I remember opening my eyes slowly, still half asleep, and just staring up at the ceiling. And that's when I saw her. Her? There was a little girl. Oh, clinging to my ceiling. Oh, absolutely. We already know I do not do creepy children. I don't want to see a creepy child. That is my worst nightmare. Clinging to the ceiling? It got worse. I didn't think it could get worse. It got worse. Not standing, not floating, clinging. Her body was pressed flat against it, like gravity didn't apply to her. Her hair hung downward toward me, just barely moving. Almost like it was underwater. This story threw me for such a damn loop that I forgot to put foundation or concealer on. That's okay. We're gonna work with it. For a second, my brain couldn't even process what I was looking at because it just made no sense. And then she moved. You guys, her head turned. No. But not like a normal person. It twisted. Slow at first and then sharper. Like something snapped inside her neck. The sound that came with it, I don't even know how to describe it properly. It was wet. Crunching. I'm genuinely not trying to be funny. This is probably going up in like top 5 scariest ghost stories that somebody has sent me. Like something tearing and grinding at the same time. It was vile and so unnatural that it made me feel sick instantly. I felt like I was going to throw up right there in my bed. And when her face finally turned fully towards me, she looked straight into my eyes and she smiled. Then she said, "I watch you." I would never sleep again. I would absolutely never sleep again. Not in that room, not in that house. I am never closing my eyes, ever. Her voice didn't match her face. Like multiple voices trying to speak at once, scraping over each other. That's when I lost it. That's when you lost it? I lost it back when you said you opened your eyes and there was a girl clinging to your ceiling. I screamed and ran out of my room as fast as I could. I don't even remember hitting the floor. I just remember bursting into my parents' room crying, trying to explain what I saw. My mom thought I had had a nightmare or sleep paralysis, but my dad didn't say anything at first because he had seen things in that house too, and he believed me. But there wasn't really anything we could do in that moment, so eventually I stayed in their room for the rest of the night. Morning came, and for a second everything felt normal again, until my mom went into my room to grab my school uniform. That's when we heard her scream, and I'll never forget that sound. I ran to the doorway, and when I looked inside, my entire room was destroyed. Not messy, not things being slightly out of place, destroyed. My bed had been shoved and turned sideways. My toy table was flipped upside down and thrown on top of it. Bins were empty, toys were scattered everywhere, and my closet looked like someone had ripped through it, pulling things out and throwing them across the room. What the hell? It didn't look like a kid had made that mess. It looked like something tore through it. And that was the moment my mom stopped dismissing it, because there was no explanation for what we were looking at. No one else had gone in there. Nothing made sense. But I knew. I knew exactly what I had seen that night. And the worst part is that it wasn't the last time. I saw her 2 more times after that. But I learned something, that if I prayed, she would leave. So that's what I did. And eventually she stopped coming back. But even now, I still think about that night, because whatever was in that house, it was watching.
Guess what? We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today. And I've been very intentional with going through everybody's messages to screenshot it, to create an upload, to tell all of these stories. And I feel like the more I tell them the stories, the scarier it gets, and the more recent the stories are from. But anyways, we're going all the way down. We're going down to Point 14 because they have a story from Point 14, and I want some Point 14ians to tell me if you ever heard this story. So our follower said, so I'm 34 and this happened when I was about 15 or 16 years old. There was a man dog tormenting a village in Point 14. Girl, nobody didn't want to go outside at all. So by my grandmother's house, I used to bathe outside, but they made a galvanized bathroom with a door. So there was a night I wanted to bathe a little late. The moon was full, and all of a sudden I heard 2 loud bangs on the galvanized, and a male voice was like, hurry up and go inside. It's time for him to roam. Girl, I did not sleep for weeks. I used to wake in the night, sleep in the day. Then I heard some hunters from the village said that they shot the man dog, and he was never seen again. This is a Lagahu. I'm convinced it's a Lagahu, you know, guys. A Lagahu man dog in the middle of a village in Point 14, tormenting the people that get killed. Do you think that there's any more in Point 14? For the people who live down on that side, I heard that there are plenty strange things that tend to happen, paranormal things that tend to happen in Point 14. Let me know, have you ever lived in the village where they had the man dog? Or do you think that there are other man dogs roaming the streets? Let me know.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of when me, my cousin, went to go visit his other cousin at his place, and we decided to take a shortcut because it was so late. And then we saw an abandoned house, and we decided to go and explore the abandoned house. Let's get into it. So today we are doing another story time / mukbang. This is an egg and fish finger sandwich, and I also have water on the side because, again, I'm trying to be healthy somehow. Okay, let's get into the story time. I'm gonna take the first bite before we get into the story time. Y'all, this particular cousin of ours just stayed like in the next village, and it wasn't far from where we stayed, right? So we decided to go and visit him, whatever, and we were playing whatever, but we were not seeing the time. Like, you guys know most that in summer it takes time to get dark, right? And by 7 p.m. that's when it's actually like dark, and you know it's light outside. We're thinking maybe it's still 4 p.m. because we've been playing. However, it starts to get dark. That's when we decide, let's check the time, because my cousin's mother asked us, like, do you guys know what time it is? Like, when are you leaving? We're like, well, we're gonna leave. And then at some point she came back and she was like, yo, like, guys, it's gonna get late, y'all should go back home. And we're like, yeah, we're gonna leave. I guess she let us be. And in all honesty, she should have told us what time it was. I think that's when we would have taken her seriously, bruh. Yo, I think we would have taken her seriously then, but we did not do that. So it starts to get dark, and we realize that, no man, like, it's kind of late, like, we need to go back home. Our village was not that far, but I think it was like a 30-minute walk. So we decide, no man, it's time for us to leave, right? And so now we realize that we're gonna get into trouble because, guys, my grandparents are very strict, bruh, and we did not tell anybody when we left. We acted like we were going to my cousin's Aussie, which is uphill, and we decided to go that way. You know, we were gonna obviously get into trouble, and I was just not with it. Like, I was just not with getting a beating. So we decided to take a shortcut. My cousin's cousin is like, no man, there's a shortcut to your village. Like, this one, you don't pass through the houses. You're going to pass through the bushes. And we're like, you know, nobody's going to steal us. Nobody's going to kidnap us. None of that happens in the villages. So we decide to take, we start walking. And as we're walking, once we walk inside the bush, and I'm thinking, you know, nothing of it, right? We're walking. I'm in front. My cousin is in the middle. My cousin's cousin is behind us. We're walking, and as we're walking, man, there's somebody that's walking, but like they're walking with us. You can hear the footsteps, and also they're breathing very loudly, like somebody that's been running, like, you know. And I'm just like, what is that? So I look behind me to see like if any of my cousins like are kind of, you know, having a seizure or I don't know, trying to faint or something. I don't know, because I look back and I'm just like, there's nothing. And I look at my cousin looks at me, my cousin looks at his cousin, and we're just like, you know, explain, guy, like explain, because you live here. What is that? So my cousin's cousin is just like, guys, let's just walk faster. Okay, so we continue walking, whatever, and this person is following us, but we don't see where they are, and obviously we just started walking faster, and then we get to these other houses. Now this is not, I don't think this was also part of this particular village, but remember we took a shortcut, so we walked through the bushes, and then we saw the other part of the village. We're walking, and then this person like kind of, you know, this person kind of disappears, or the breathing kind of stops, right? Walking, and then there's this other house, right? That looks abandoned, whatever. The lights inside that house was on. So my cousin's cousin is like, it's crazy how the lights in this house are on because nobody stays here. And I'm like, you know, maybe like there's somebody that's watching the house for the people that don't stay here. And he's like, no, this is an abandoned house. Like, two of this house, guys, burnt with this house. There were 3 people that used to stay here. They all burnt inside that house. So like, you know, it's kind of crazy that, you know, the lights is on. And so my cousin is like, no, remember guys, my cousin is forward. So my cousin's like, no, let's go see like what's inside the house because the light is on. Maybe there's a ghost in there. Like, let's go check it out. I'm like, yo, like I don't want to. And obviously because his cousin is like, let's go. I was like, you know what, like I'm outnumbered. If I stand here, away here, there was a man that was breathing heavily. So I'm just like, you know what, I'm not trying to stand here alone. Next thing I'm standing here alone. They ran away because they saw something there. And then this man comes after me, like, where am I going to go? Because I don't know the way. I walk with my cousins inside this abandoned house. So as we're walking there, as we're walking towards closer and closer to the house, we see a man that's standing, like a shadow standing near the window, like it's standing actually at the window and it's looking at us. And I'm like, you guys sure you still want to go there? They're like, yeah, we still want to go. I'm like, okay. And then this guy disappears, guys. Like, he walks away type vibe. The shadow walks away. We're walking. We walk towards the house, and my cousin peeks inside the house and says he sees nothing. I peek, guys, and I see furniture. Like, and then my cousin's cousin peeks inside and he's like, I can see a baby in there. And this baby starts crying, guys. So my cousin peeked first, I peeked after. I saw furniture, he saw nothing. This one, my cousin's cousin now sees a baby inside there and he looks away. He's like, damn, there's a baby on there, whatever. This baby, guy, starts to cry. This baby starts to cry very loudly. Number one, there were 2 options. Number 1, run back to my cousin's house so that they can accompany us, and then we will be even more late. We would get a beating. Number 2, just run forward, you know. And you know what, and like, guys, our stupid heads are like, let's just run forward, forgetting that my cousin's cousin is with us. He needs to also go back home. So now we start running. We start running, guys. When we get to the road, we had to cross a road to go to my village. When we get there, guys, as we're running, there is a man that is standing in the middle of the street. This man's face looks very smushed. He's covered in blood and all of that. Like, you can tell that, you know, he probably got bumped by a car or something, but I wasn't thinking anything of it. Guys, I'm there trying to run. Guys, my body gave out. I tried to run, my body gave out, guys. I fainted because my cousin and his cousin were running and I'm behind. And then this guy eventually, like, my cousins run. They pass him. Me, I'm the last one. And guess what? This guy blocks my way. I stand and I freeze, guys. I fainted right there and there because I was like, what's gonna happen now, bruh? So I sprint past this guy and I get, like, I don't remember what happened or who, how, when, but I woke up and I was at my grandma's place in bed and my grandma was sitting there looking at me waiting for an explanation, because apparently my cousin was too scared to say anything. Honestly, I feel like he wasn't too scared to say anything. He just wanted to act like he was very scared and leave me with everything because he doesn't stay at my grandma's place. So he wanted to leave me with the Ndabas, guys, and he left me with them. Shame. I did. We eventually told them the truth of what had happened, or whatever, what we had seen, but we did not tell them that we went to my cousin's place. We just said, no, we were around the village and this happened and we lost our way, la 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 la, just lying, y'all. And after that, guys, after that, like, they took me to a traditional healer or whatever, and I don't know what that person was saying, because, you know, sometimes when traditional healers speak fast and you need somebody to interpret it to you. I was just not interested, guys. And when I tell you, each and every single time for a good couple of years, every single time I'd go to the villages, guys, as soon as I look out the window and it's like 11 a.m. or 11 p.m., sorry, I would see this woman, like this old woman, standing outside my window. Not like here, like this is the window, right? And they would be standing like here inside the yard looking at me. I would close the curtains, and sometimes I would bring my cousins. I would bring my cousin and show him, and he'd be like, I don't see anything. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right, there's nothing. That was probably a tree. Because I was scared to tell the adults and be like, yo, like, I'm seeing things, because they were never, either one, they were never going to take me seriously. Two, they were going to be like, yeah, that serves us right, because me and my cousin, guys, were very naughty. Like, given a chance, we would just dollar. But yeah, guys, that's the end of the story time. I couldn't finish this braid because I am full. But I will see you in the next one. Bye.
In honor of Women's History Month, I'm doing 31 Days of Women in Horror. Today, we have the incredibly talented Jennifer Connelly. Many people remember her from the fantasy film Labyrinth, where she played Sarah Williams alongside David Bowie. Her connection to darker storytelling actually began earlier. In 1985, she starred in an Italian supernatural film called Phenomena, directed by Dario Argento. The film follows a young girl with a mysterious psychological connection to insects, which actually help them locate a serial killer. In 1998, she starred in the dark science fiction thriller Dark City, a visually striking cult classic. Then, in 2000, she delivered one of the most intense performances of her career, starring in Requiem for a Dream. This film is powerful and extremely heavy, exploring addiction and the devastating consequences that come with it. In 2005, she returned to horror in the supernatural film Dark Water, where she played Dahlia Williams. And in 2008, she played in the science fiction remake The Day the Earth Stood Still. Jennifer Connelly may not appear in horror as often as some do, but when she does, she brings depth to every role. Come back tomorrow for my 31 Days of Women in Horror in honor of Women's History Month.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
I've never committed a crime, right? So I don't know how I would act, and I have no interest in finding out. I could tell you, though, that it would be nothing like her. The day is May 11th, 2022. Caitlin Cash has just gotten home expecting to walk in and see her friend Anna Mariah Wilson inside waiting for her. Anna Mariah Wilson, known to every single person in her life as Mo, had been staying at Caitlin's apartment in Austin, Texas, and she didn't live there, but she was in town for a 150-mile bike race that was only 4 days away. So Caitlin lets herself inside of her house, but instead of saying hi to her friend and asking how her day was, she picks up the phone to call 911. Operator on the phone, Austin 911, what is your emergency? Caitlin, with a very shaky voice, answers, I need EMS. My friend is staying with me and I just walked in and she's lying on the bathroom floor and I don't know what happened. I can't tell what happened. You can literally hear the emotion in her voice when the operator asks her if her friend is breathing, and she says no, she's not breathing. The operator walks Caitlin through how to do chest compressions while she waits for the ambulance to arrive, and Caitlin is counting on the phone. 1, 2, 3, 4. The operator is focused on Caitlin as they're both talking to each other out loud on the phone, trying to put any and every single emotion to the side, understanding that the only thing that mattered in that moment was saving Mo's life. He says, keep going, Caitlin. There's a lot of help coming as fast as they can. Keep going. And she does. 5, 6, 7, 8. She did not leave her friend alone for 1 second. She didn't give up on trying to do every single thing that she could, but it didn't work. The 911 call came in at 9:56 p.m. By 10:10, authorities were on the scene, pronouncing 25-year-old Anna Mariah Wilson no longer alive. The medical examiner's autopsy would later confirm 3 wounds, 2 to the head and 1 to the chest, and note that at least one of those took place after Mo was already lying on the floor. She also had a wound going completely through her hand, indicating that she was probably putting her hands up in self-defense, fighting for her life. Mo's expensive racing bike worth thousands of dollars had been discarded in the bushes outside. Whoever did this was not there to rob her. Austin police issued a statement the following day noting that the incident did not appear to be a random act, and the investigation into finding out who was responsible for such a horrific act begun. Mo Wilson was born May 18th, 1996 in New Hampshire, but she grew up in Kirby in Vermont, a small community in the northeastern corner of the state. Her father, Eric Wilson, had skied for the U.S. national ski team. Not only him, but her aunt Laura had also skied at the Olympics. So sports were not just a hobby in the Wilson household, it was more like a way of life. Mo grew up skiing in the winter with a dream of eventually becoming an Olympic skier. In the summer, she also took up mountain biking, so if she wasn't skiing, she was biking. And she went on to attend Burke Mountain Academy, one of the most elite ski training schools in the country. By her sophomore year, she was ranked 3rd nationally for her age group. She was on her way to completing her biggest dream, and Mo was so good at keeping the mindset of everything happens for a reason, whatever is meant to be will be. And that exact optimism ended up being the only thing that kept her spirits up after she tore her ACL in her sophomore year. Mo rehabbed, worked hard, came back, but then she toured again, this time shortly after joining the Dartmouth College ski team in 2015. 2 ACL injuries would have ended Mo's careers, but not for Mo. She did not allow it to ruin her athletic hopes and dreams. Instead, her injuries just redirected her. During her long months of rehab after her injury, she began riding bikes seriously for the first time. And to say she was good at it would be such an understatement. Mo graduated in 2019 with a Bachelor of Engineering degree and began competing in mountain bike and gravel racing almost immediately after. The work ethic and the discipline that Mo had was such an inspiration for every single person in her life. In 2020, Mo won her first professional gravel race. In late 2021, she won another and placed second at the legendary Leadville Trail 100 in Colorado. Within 3 years of this new adventure, Mo became one of the best. So much so that she chose to quit her full-time job and commit to being an athlete and competing full-time. Saying, quote, "When you love something so much to the point where you're fully committed, you make the choice and the risk sort of becomes irrelevant because even if you fail, it will all have been worth it. The process and everything that comes along with that is more important and more valuable in the end," end quote. Mo had plans to keep biking, to keep racing. She had big dreams and everything pointed towards her accomplishing those. Her coach said that when Mo got on the bike, she had an engine. But sadly, Mo's life would be cut incredibly short. At the crime scene, of course, investigators talked to Mo's friend Caitlin to get as much information as they could from her. Caitlin tells them that Mo did not live in Austin, that she was from Vermont but living in San Francisco at the time, and she was only in Austin because she had that race coming up. She confirmed that she did not have a boyfriend and that she really didn't know that many people in Austin because she wasn't from there. By the way, Caitlin, the footage of her talking to authorities makes your heart feel so heavy because you can see how completely and utterly devastated she is to be in the situation that she found herself in. Not in her worst nightmares could her or anyone imagine that something like this would happen. At first, it looks like she's in shock, like her face is just blank and it's like she's not even almost there. She's just kind of responding to the questions as they're coming. But once she starts crying, she does not stop and she's trying her best to talk in full sentences to try and help out as much as she can. It's so sad. Caitlin tells authorities that night she had dinner plans with her friends. She went to dinner, came back home, and she says that Mo had been with her friend that night too, or earlier in the day, and she gives them the name Colin Strickland. 36-year-old Colin was also a professional cyclist himself, and unlike Mo, he did live in Austin. He had a place with his girlfriend. So the investigation begins, and detectives are trying to lay out all of the information that they have to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And what they know so far is that Mo had seen her friend Colin the night that she passed, that the crime scene did not look like an accident, a robbery gone wrong, or a crime of opportunity. They found Mo's bike disposed of in a nearby area, just thrown into this grassy area, which made no sense because Mo always kept her bike inside. She would lay it right by the front door. And then the most helpful thing that they had so far came from when they gathered all CCTV footage from Ring cameras near Caitlin's house. Because what they saw on those cameras painted a pattern. There was one SUV that was seen so many different times on May 11th, driving up and down the street, slowing down every single time that it passed Caitlin's house. It was the same dark colored SUV with a bike rack on the back of it. Then another neighbor came forward with their Ring camera footage. And that is so devastating because in that one you can hear Mo screaming for her life. You can hear the last minutes, the last seconds of her life. She's yelling and then there's 3 loud bangs. After those, there was no more screaming. That was huge because now they had the exact time that the crime took place and a suspicious vehicle driving around the area. Also, the fact that that SUV had a bike rack attached to the back of it begged the question, could it have been the car of a fellow biker? And who could that fellow biker be? Well, Colin Strickland is the only name they could come up with. Like I said, a fellow biker that was not only friends with Mo, but also coincidentally the last known person to have been with her the night that she passed. Investigators need to talk to Colin Strickland. So they find him, they go to his house, he walks out of the garage, they ask him if he knows Mo, he says yes. And like I mentioned, Colin was a professional cyclist himself. He was well known, he was well sponsored, very well respected in the cycling world. He lived in Austin, Texas with his girlfriend of roughly 3 years, a yoga teacher and a licensed realtor named Caitlin Armstrong. In the fall of 2021, Colin and Caitlin had briefly separated. Their breakup lasted somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks, but it was during that window that Colin met Mo at a gravel race in Idaho in September of 2021. They were both recently single, obviously had a lot in common, and they got along like a house on fire. In late October 2021, Mo visited Colin in Austin. The two of them began a brief romantic relationship. It was definitely a thing, but not like a thing. I don't know how to describe it. It sounds like it was quite casual, like it was definitely a thing, but pretty casual. At least from how Colin talked about it, he described it as lasting only between a week or so. Then Mo went home. Colin and his girlfriend Caitlin made up, moved back in together. According to Colin, his relationship with Mo became platonic and professional after that. They only saw each other, according to him, they only saw each other at cycling events and they were just friends. Is that true? We don't know, but based on Mo's text messages found on her phone, it sounded like, at least in Mo's eyes, things with Colin were not completely done. Messages kind of gave off the idea that there was some sort of unfinished business there, even though Colin was back with his ex-girlfriend. Also, Colin had changed Mo's contact name on his phone to avoid his girlfriend getting mad at him. So that sounds to me like he was more than aware that him and Mo were not just friends. And Colin's girlfriend did not think so either. A friend of Mo's had told investigators that Caitlin Armstrong had contacted Mo repeatedly in the months before that night of May 11th, telling her to stay away from Colin. And if that wasn't suspicious enough, a jealous, angry girlfriend, then authorities spoke to an anonymous witness, and what they had to say did not look good, to say the least, because that person said that they had been with Caitlin in person when she found out about Mo and Colin. They said that she was visibly angry and did not look happy one bit about the situation. That witness also stated that she was with Caitlin at a cafe when Caitlin told her that she knew that Mo was in town in Austin. And when they were together, the witness asked Caitlin what she would do if Colin started dating someone else, and Caitlin very clearly and confidently said that if he did, she would get rid of the new girl, specifically saying, quote, "I would her," end quote. Later on, we also find out that Caitlin had been tracking Mo's movement on the fitness app called Strava. Strava, by the way, if you don't know, it's an app where you can log your workouts, so you can see how long people ran for or rode their bike for and the exact route that they took. Records showed at least 6 different instances of a specific user ID matching Caitlin searching for information about Mo's bike rides in the days leading up to May 11th. Caitlin Armstrong, in a classic case of psychotic ex-girlfriends, had been watching her every move. When officers showed up to Colin's house on May 12th to inform him of what had happened, they told him that the case was being investigated as a homicide, and this was just the day after. And the look on Colin's face, I can only describe to be like a blank stare. He did look to be like he was in shock. He tells them that he was with her the day before, that they went to a public pool and then they got food afterwards, and then he dropped her off at her friend's, Caitlin's house. And not to confuse the Caitlins, Caitlin with a C is Mo's friend, Caitlin with a K is the ex-girlfriend. Anyway, there is CCTV footage matching up every single thing that he's saying. He says that he drops her off but does not go inside, and there is CCTV footage that captures Colin riding away after dropping her off. Investigators believe that it was only a couple minutes after Colin left that somebody else entered the house and ambushed Mo. While authorities are at Colin's house talking to him, they notice something incredibly significant, because on his driveway is that dark SUV that had been seen on CCTV footage riding up and down the house that Mo was staying at. That exact SUV that looked extremely suspicious. The 2012 Jeep Cherokee belonged to none other than Caitlin Armstrong. When Colin told officers about her, he described her as his roommate and his on and off girlfriend, but he says that he does know her well and that he's only ever known her to be a kind and gentle person. So they end up asking him to go down to the station for proper questioning, and still there you can hear his voice, like he does sound like he's in shock and trying to process. They tell him that Caitlin's vehicle was seen on CCTV footage driving up and down the area of the crime scene, and they ask him if she's the jealous type, if she knew anything about Mo, and if she would be the kind of person that would be capable of committing such a horrible crime. And his response to that is, quote, "It's just so far beyond the realm of reality that I live in or thought," end quote. He tells them that if he thought that Caitlin was the kind of person that would be capable of doing such a horrible thing, he would not be living with her. He wouldn't be involved with her. So he says that it would be so incredibly disturbing and that he does not believe it. From Colin, they also find out that he had recently purchased 2 and that him and Caitlin together had gone to the range to practice using them. All of the dots were connecting and every single one was pointing towards Caitlin Armstrong. Police then go and speak to Caitlin Armstrong directly, bringing her into the station on an old outstanding misdemeanor warrant for failing to pay for a Botox treatment. Kind of random, but it was beneficial for them. So they bring her in for that. During that questioning, when detectives confront her about the entire situation with Mo, her only response is, "I would like to leave." They ask her about Colin and Mo and about how much she knew about that relationship that they had, and she did not say much. All she really did was roll her eyes. Then something goes wrong because authorities realize that the warrant that there was against Caitlin for her not paying for her Botox was filed incorrectly. The birth date on the warrant was wrong, and for that reason, they had to let her go. So she was released that same day. They had no other choice. The morning after that police interview, on May 13th, 2022, Caitlin Armstrong drives her Jeep Cherokee to a CarMax dealership in South Austin and sells it for $12,000 in cash. The next day, May 14th, she boarded a flight from Austin to Houston, then connected to New York, very clearly trying to get away before it was too late. Austin police issued a formal arrest warrant for first-degree murder on May 17th. But by then, Caitlin Armstrong had already managed to leave town. She may as well have been yelling, "I am guilty," from the rooftop because, I don't know, by the way she was acting, it's like you're very clearly trying to flee. You did flee. You are hiding something. On May 18th, she was dropped off at the airport in New Jersey, but no other flights were booked in her name. She was dropped off at the airport with no flight to her name. She had purchased a new phone and prepaid for a debit card at Walmart after her original phone was seized during the search of her home. And the reason why there was no other flights in her name is because she had set up email accounts under false identities, and then she boarded a flight to Costa Rica using her sister's passport as her ID. The manhunt that followed lasted 43 days and involved the Austin Police Department, the U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force, and eventually international authorities. Caitlin Armstrong moved to Costa Rica under 3 different names, taught yoga classes, spent $6,000 in cash on cosmetic surgery. She got a nose job in an attempt to change her appearance. She also cut and dyed her hair dark brown. So just to remind you, the crime took place on May 11th, and when authorities finally managed to find Caitlin on June 29th, 2022, she was at a hostel at a beach. She had bandages on her nose, which she claimed were from a surfboarding accident, not a nose job. She had her own passport as well as her sister's passport in her possession, and by that point, authorities had more than enough to arrest her. She was arrested, deported, and sent back to the United States. Her bond was set at $3.5 million. Caitlin Armstrong pled not guilty. Then on October 12th of 2023, just 3 weeks before her trial was set to begin, she attempted to escape from the Travis County Corrections officers who had escorted her to a medical appointment outside of the jail. They caught her, put her back in handcuffs, and of course that only got her in even more trouble. Her attempt to run away would also be later brought up in court. Her trial began with opening statements on November 1st of 2023 in Austin, Texas, nearly 18 months after Mo Wilson was taken from this earth. The jury took 2 hours to deliberate, and on November 16th, after a 9-day trial, Caitlin Marie Armstrong was found guilty. That following day, Mo's mother, Karen Wilson, addressed the courtroom directly, quote, "I would have done anything to stand in the way of that. She did not deserve a death like that. From the day that she was born, she had a force in her. She lived as if every day was her last, and she lived it so fully. She never wasted any time. It's as if she knew her life would be short." I have goosebumps. Caitlin Armstrong was sentenced to 90 years in prison and fined $10,000. Under Texas law, she will be eligible for parole in 30 years. Mo's father, Eric Wilson, also spoke after the sentencing, saying, quote, "As a family, we believe justice has been served. There really are no winners here. This is not a time for celebration, but a time for prayer," end quote. In May of 2024, Mo's parents filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against Caitlin, seeking $1 million in damages. A judge ordered Caitlin to pay $15 million to the Wilson family in June of 2024. Another horrible story that just reminds you how short life is and how evil people can be. That is all for me today. Thank you guys for spending time with me today and for listening to Mo's story. She truly sounds like the most angelic, beautiful girl. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
The woman behind me is Alice Paul. She's arguably the woman most responsible for getting the 19th Amendment passed. But what happened to her is probably one of the biggest disasters in American history. Reminder, I cover a lot of dark stuff on this page, so viewer discretion's advised, but follow along if you want to hear more. So this is Alice Paul, and she is officially my new girl crush. She was born in 1885. She was raised a Quaker, but she went on to become a strategist, a lawyer, a PhD, and collected degrees from universities like Pokemon cards. She was unbelievably smart. She got a biology degree just because she said that, like, no one else is going to teach me science, and I want to learn about it. So I think she's a rock star. But something important to know about her is that the president at the time, Woodrow Wilson, hated her. Alice Paul was the first person ever to protest outside of the White House. It had never been done before. All they were doing were holding up signs, pointing out the president's hypocrisy. This really pissed him off, so Alice Paul eventually winds up being abducted, tortured, and sent to a mental hospital to try and be discredited. Obviously, this pissed off her fellow suffragettes who were there in solidarity, so they abducted them too, which all wound up being subjected to the same torture, which is referred to the Night of Terror. The press found out about the Night of Terror, and because of the horrifying PR, the 19th Amendment wound up passing. But it was at a pretty big cost. The Night of Terror happened in 1917, but I actually think the story's still pretty relevant, and here's why. History has a tendency to repeat itself when we stop looking. More and more, I see people arguing for things that are against their own interests, and I am not here to tell anybody what to think. However, I think it's possible that some people are developing opinions without having the full picture. The freedom we have to say things without consequence from our government was earned through the torture and mistreatment of many other people, and it's easy to take that for granted because we have no frame of reference. The right to say something, including something that contradicts the people who were tortured or died for your right to say it, is exactly what Alice Paul, the suffragettes, and any other oppressed party were fighting for. I do a deep dive on this on the podcast, and if you like stories like this, you may like some of the other episodes. I hope to see you there.
My partner, my ex-fiance of over 10 good years, told me that he never loved me. He only kept me on because I was convenient to him. He kept me on to waste my youthful years so that I would become infertile, so no man would want me. Yes, you heard me right, ladies. I'm sharing this so that you do your research properly, so that you do not end up in the exact same situation as I did, wasting 10 plus good years with this, I don't even know what name to call him. Story time. Like I said, I met this guy when I was at university. We both did same course, so it was easier. I was in my 20s when I met this guy. So you can imagine everything we did together. We got our house together when we rented, jobs. He did his PhD, I did my PhD. In the beginning, we made it clear. I told him that I wanted children. I always wanted to get married. He told me he wanted the exact same thing. He wanted children, he wanted to get married, he wanted to buy a house together, he wanted to do everything that a couple do together. So I knew we were both on board. Fast forward, this guy, we just had a little argument about where to go and eat for my birthday. It was my birthday, remember, not his birthday. But this guy made a huge deal out of this. He always does that. He will make a huge deal. It has to be his way or no other way. And I always let it slide because I want the peace. This guy tells me that he never liked me. He never loved me. I laughed out loud, thinking it's just a joke because we are arguing. He started blurping out, telling me that I was a convenient to him. That's why he kept me. He dragged me throughout these years so that it would be easier for him to afford the rent, easier for him, for the support that I was giving him. He never wanted children. He never wants anyone else to have children with me. So he dragged things out. He made the excuses, and it is true. Every birthday, he would tell me that he cannot wait till the next birthday till we start trying to have children. Anniversaries, this guy would tell me that we should wait until we buy a house together. This guy would tell me we should wait until we get better jobs, which pays more. This guy would tell me We should just wait until we're safe enough to be able to have children together. Only to then drop the bombshell on my birthday, wasting 10 plus years of my life telling me that you never liked me. He never loved me. He never wanted children. He never even wanted children. And therefore, he didn't want any guy having children with me. He wanted to waste my fertile years so that he can dump me, so that I would not be able to have children with any man. I could not believe this. So I started thinking back all those years, all the incidents, all the arguments, everything. He will always gaslit me. Everything that he will always blame me for being the fault. I was shocked. I thought I knew this guy. But for him to tell me this, to waste my youthful years, all these years, to then tell me this, I didn't even know what to say. I moved out. No one knew where I moved to. But why? Why on earth am I having weird letters? No return address. No one's name on it. But weird things of baby clothes. No note. Weird things of saying that I hope you come back to your senses. Weird things of saying that you will never have children because you are almost in your 40s. I know that it's coming from him. And I don't know what more this guy is capable of doing. Ladies, please be careful. Do your research. And also, if the red flags are there, please do not ignore them. Don't turn into me, waiting 10 plus years to be told this. After he has gained what he has been wanting from me for all these years, this is what he tells me. I'm just shocked. I'm lost for words. I don't even know what to say.
This is a case that I'll never be able to get over, and it only gets darker and darker the more you look into the people around her. When Susan Powell vanished from her home in West Valley City, Utah in December of 2009, her husband Josh immediately became a suspect. Josh had claimed that in the middle of the night, he decided to take his and Susan's 2 young sons on a camping trip in the freezing cold December weather. According to Josh's story, he woke the boys up after midnight and drove them to the desert to camp for hours before returning home the next day. When they arrived back home, he discovered that his wife Susan was missing. Now obviously it doesn't take a genius to find that story strange, and Josh quickly became the main person of interest. But the case got even more unsettling when attention turned to Josh's father, Stephen Powell. Stephen had an obsessive fixation on Susan. He had been secretly filming her while they lived together, pleasuring himself to her pictures on camera, and stealing her things, like her underwear, used razors, and even her used feminine hygiene products. During the investigation into Susan's disappearance, police uncovered thousands of inappropriate photos and videos in Stephen's possession. And Susan wasn't the only one. Other victims that Stephen had been filming were underage girls around his neighborhood. So Stephen was later arrested on CP charges, but it was determined that he had no involvement in Susan's disappearance. Meanwhile, Susan's 2 sons were placed in foster care, while authorities continued building a case against Josh as the one responsible for making his wife disappear. In February 2012, during what was supposed to be a supervised visit with his children, a social worker dropped them off at Josh's house. But while the children ran inside, excited to see their father, the CPS worker was just seconds away from reaching the door as Josh slammed the door in her face and locked it behind him. He then attacked his own children with a hatchet and then set the house on fire, killing all 3 of them. Susan Powell has never been found, but investigators believe that Josh murdered her years before the tragedy that ended his life and the lives of his sons, leaving behind one of the most heartbreaking and haunting cases I've ever heard of.
Me and Brandon had been living together for a little over a year, had our own place, both working, and were doing good. Until one day I come home from work and find his sister Nicole and her boyfriend Timmy laid up in my extra bedroom. Timmy and Nicole already had 2 children that CPS had taken away and placed with relatives, and Nicole was now pregnant with their 3rd. They had intentionally gotten pregnant and said if CPS tried to take this baby, they would go on the run, even though they didn't have a car and couldn't afford a loaf of bread. So Brandon tells me, look, I'm going to let my sister rent that room back there because she's pregnant and homeless. Brandon assures me it's just for a few days and then then they'll be gone. But of course, that's not how it went. And because his name is on the lease, I can't stop him. They both moved in, would not work, and just laid up all day eating our food, using our power, and destroying the house. Now, Timmy would smoke here and there, but he didn't really use drugs, but Nicole did. She was a heavy user even while pregnant. So me and her get into it numerous times about her using these substances and drinking while she's pregnant, and of course she don't want to hear it. Well, because Nicole was on probation, her PO shows up at our house and tears the place apart looking for pipes and drugs and stuff like that because she's living in our house and we can't stop him. But I think her and her PO started sleeping together because within a month or so, he quit doing all that. He wasn't even drug testing her, and he was giving her rides to town and stuff and giving her money, so I'm pretty sure they were. One day I get a knock at the door, and it's a CPS caseworker. He asked me where Nicole is, and I said she's back there in that bedroom. So she goes back there, and she talks to Nicole and tells her, you got to start taking drug tests because you're in your 3rd trimester. Nicole refuses, and CPS tells her, if you don't come to this appointment and take this test, we're going to take that baby at the hospital. So one night when Nicole is 7.5 months pregnant, Nicole is missing. So we get in the car, we call the police, and we're all scattered about looking for her pregnant ass. And that's when one of the dealers calls us and says that she's passed out in his front yard and his old lady is not happy about that and we better come get her. This happens multiple times throughout her pregnancy. So when she's like 8.5 months pregnant, her and her PO get into a big fight in the front yard. I don't know if she wouldn't put out or he wouldn't give her money. Something went on to where they were damn near fist fighting out there. The next thing we knew, he put her in handcuffs, violated her probation, and sent her to jail. Within a month, she goes to her court hearing and they send her off to the prison, and now she's like 9 months pregnant in prison. For a few weeks, all is well at our house, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe this will work. But then all of a sudden, we get a phone call. It's Brandon's mama saying that we have to take her 3rd baby because she's already got one, the dad's already got one, and nobody else in the family wants to deal with them, so it's our responsibility. And I said, hell no. We both work too much, we're not here, and I'm not dealing with your sister and her boyfriend. That. One of their aunts steps up to the plate and says that she'll take the baby. Great. The aunt has the baby for the next 3 months, and the baby is thriving, doing great, up until Nicole gets out of prison. She comes to our house and says, look, I'm going to try to get my kids back and I want to do right. I even started going to church. And of course, Brandon fell for it. He lets her move in. 2 weeks later, a CPS caseworker comes out to the home because they're going to give her baby back. I looked this CPS caseworker dead in her eye and I said, are you fucking stupid? Why would you give her this child back when you've already taken 2 other kids from her? This one was born in prison. She hasn't even bonded with this child. The aunt has. Why would you do that? I'm not raising her child, so if you place that child here, you damn well better be monitoring her. And believe it or not, they gave her child back. And because they were staying there, here come Timmy as well. So they're living with us again, and now they have a baby with them. Now, I didn't know, but during all these little interviews and stuff with CPS, my partner Brandon was assuring CPS that he was going to watch his sister. This man was at work all day. He couldn't watch her. It wasn't even a day. By the end of that evening of them having their child back, she disappeared that night. We don't see her for like a week. And I called CPS multiple times. I called a lot. We did so much and nobody would help us. And then she finally shows back up. Her and Timmy get in this big fight. The police get called and CPS comes back out. And then they swear it's not going to happen again. And CPS leaves the baby with them. For the next 2 months, it is absolute chaos in that house. Her and Timmy are fighting. She's staying gone all night. Hell, sometimes a week. The baby ain't got diapers, no milk. They're not taking care of her. I was calling CPS on a weekly basis. They weren't even looking around to see if we had food. Like once they brought the baby, they didn't come back. They weren't even drug testing her and Timmy. So it's January, like really cold weather. She asked me if I would babysit and I said, no, I just got off work. I'm not babysitting for you to go out and get high. Oh, she gets mad. That's how entitled she was. About 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up freezing. I'm like, damn, what in the world? And when I look beside me, there's a little baby laying there. And the window's wide open. Screen's been kicked out. We kept our bedroom door locked at night because they stole stuff. This bitch had done broke into our bedroom door, left the baby on the bed, and then snuck out the window to go meet up with her dealer. I was up all night with a sick, angry baby. I had to be at work at friggin' 6 o'clock the next morning. A couple of days later, her and Timmy get into it and they tear the damn house apart while we're at work. We come home, find this big mess, and I'm just fed up. I called CPS so much, I knew them on a first name basis. And when I spoke to this worker, who was the supervisor, and assured me she was going to check into this and do something, I warned her, this child is going to get hurt. She does not watch her. She don't feed her. All she cares about is getting high and getting the benefits. The supervisor had the nerve to say to me, well, doesn't the child's father live there? Can't he help out? I said, he could, but he don't. So me and Brandon get in this big fight, and I mean, it was like one of the worst ones we ever had about them living with us. I tell Brandon, I'm done, I'm out. So I start packing my stuff and Brandon leaves to go back to work. So I start taking my stuff to my parents' house, and on the 3rd trip back, when I pull up in the driveway, I see 4 police cars and 2 white vans parked out front. I get out the car and the sheriff deputies and the CPS workers come running up and they were like, where's the mother? Where's the father? We have to talk to them right now. This is unacceptable. I could tell these caseworkers were just putting on a show in front of the cops. Now they demanded to know where Nicole was, and I told them I have no idea. She smokes crack. She's never here. Like I've been telling you for months. Nicole was supposed to take the baby to CPS for an appointment and she never showed up, and they were just now coming to the house to confront her about missing that appointment. But when they got to the house, guess who they found crawling out on the edge of the highway? The baby. And guess who was supposed to be at home with the baby but had left and left the screen door wide open? Nicole. So I said, really? I've been begging you for months to do something to help this baby. Now you want to step in. As a matter of fact, I don't even know why I'm talking to you because this has nothing to do with me. I'm moving out. Off. Sheriff deputy walks over and was like, I know it's annoying and aggravating, but if you could just help her find the bottles and diapers, they're going to take the baby now. And I said, oh, finally, really? They're going to take the baby? Well, okay, I will help you, no problem. Let me go get this bag together. So then Brandon comes home and he's like, what in the world is going on? And we tell him, and he's like, is somebody getting charged? I said, believe it or not, no, they're not charging them with child neglect. Nothing. They're getting away with it again. The sheriff's supervisor looks at me and says, well, ma'am, there's nothing we really can do about this. The child is not hurt or injured. I said, she was crawling on the highway, found by a CPS caseworker, and you're telling me there's nothing you can do? They should have negligence stamped on their forehead. I go in the house and start snatching up bottles, diapers, toys, clothes, whatever I can find, and put it in a diaper bag, get her clean diaper and clothes on her, hand her over to the caseworkers, and I leave. But what pissed me off was after it all happened and after I moved out, Nicole had the nerve to call me and tell me this was my fault because I wouldn't babysit for her. I said, bitch, it ain't my responsibility to take care of your child that you intentionally brought into this world after 2 others had been taken. That's on you. So we have a heated exchange and I said, look, bitch, I'll beat your ass. You just don't realize how far gone I am right now. And she kept pushing and pushing until I finally got in the car and I went over there and I beat her ass. So they ended up taking the baby back to the aunt's house. And of course, Nicole and Timmy swore they were going to get this baby back. They were going to do right, and they never did. This aunt has raised that child ever since. She's still there now. But I couldn't even believe that they let these people have this child to begin with when they had already taken the first 2. And that's what's wrong with the system.